Good evening, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the Two Mikes, another blockbuster show tonight, despite the heat that's adversely affecting Porky's brain and the cold that is attacking my body. We've got a new take on the Great Fire of London, which happened 350 years ago this week. We're talking to psychologists about the demons that exist in the minds of comedians, and it's Porky Vision as well, the greatest TV review this side of Beijing, the one place where one man tells you so much about so little. You're listening to the Two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. And it is still pretty hot out there, and it is coming towards the end of the month. It is August 31st, of course, very shortly. It is the death of, it's the anniversary of the death of Princess Diana, which we might talk about a little bit later on. Yeah. But first of all, a very good evening to you.
And a very good evening to you, Mike, as well. And I can't quite believe this, and maybe I was half asleep or something. I'm sure this morning somebody told me that in 2 days' time it's the first day of autumn.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't think that could be right.
No, I think it is. Once you're out of August, you're in September, you're in autumn, aren't you?
I suppose very possibly.
It's my favourite season.
Is it?
Autumn is my favourite season.
Meteorologically actually becomes autumn straight away.
Now,
have you never heard of an Indian summer?
Oh, yeah, I've heard of the Indian summer.
Indian summer's usually in September, isn't it?
Indian summer's usually in September, you're absolutely right. But I'll tell you something, it's by far my favourite season, autumn. Once the leaves start twirling down off the trees, once you're kicking your...
That's already started, actually. I had some today on my car.
Really?
Parked my car in a car park today. When I came back, it was covered in leaves, yeah.
Can't be.
Well, because it's so dry, and the leaves are already falling off the trees.
Is that right? Yeah, well, that could be a case.
I thought you lived in leafy suburbia.
Oh, I do, but I haven't seen any brown leaves. I have seen a few brown leaves, you're right, and that is down to the very hot weather.
Yeah.
Good job that on a daily basis I'm refilling my bird bath.
Yes.
So that my little tweeting friends, twittering friends, or whatever you want to call them, have somewhere to go. Because, of course, you mocked my intentions when I set up my bird bath and said it's raining, and it was raining at the start of the summer, but it's not now.
Well, you did also tell me that you weren't really getting much success and very few birds were actually coming your way.
What's this, a Lemsip?
I've got a Lemsip sachet here, yeah. Well, because I think I've developed a bit of a cold. As I told you last night, summer colds are some of the worst ones to have. I think I caught it off our friend Donald up in Edinburgh over the weekend.
Donald...
so I've been sort of battling away. I had some chicken noodle soup a bit earlier.
That's right.
So I'm feeling okay. But
Donald is a great man, but like King Canute, you can't keep back the tidal waves, including the summer cold, which is
exactly right.
Exactly
right. So I might have, instead of my cup of tea, which I'm just about to have, I will have probably a Lemsip or something.
Okay, fine. Now, we'll talk about the weather a bit later. Sorry?
You don't object to that, do you?
To what?
If I have a Lemsip.
No, what I would object to if you pass that cold on to me, because you've got to remember only 1/3 of my heart works, and when I get a cold, I'm in serious medical trouble.
Well, you were in bad shape for about 2 weeks, and you continued to come into the studio, and we continued to do a show together, and eventually I got what you had.
Yeah.
And you had no sympathy for me whatsoever.
Why didn't you take precautions?
Well, I took as many precautions as I could, but I couldn't sit here with a mask on, obviously, because it would impede my ability to speak.
I've managed to purloin a load of sort of pills and things.
Purloin?
Yeah.
What do you mean, purloin?
Well, through a sort of...
on the black market?
Well, no. So you see the way I'm touching my right eye
I can see that, but nobody else can.
That's sort of winking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've managed to make sure
through nefarious means?
Well, the thing... I'll tell you what it is. Because only 1/3 of my heart works, colds hit me really badly. Colds and flu and this sort of thing. Because, of course, it puts a terrible amount of pressure on your breathing system. Yeah. And the second most important thing a heart does is help you breathe. The first most important thing it does is pump blood around your body. Yeah. The second is help you breathe. The third is your digestive system. That's why I worry about you. Because if you ever have a heart attack, it won't be through stress. Yeah. It won't be through overweight. It'll be through the amount of time that your heart spends digesting food because you eat a lot.
But you say that, but I don't actually eat a lot at all.
Do you see that people picked up on the fact that the first night we were in here, when unfortunately we were late, coming back from Gatwick Airport, everybody picked up on one fact. It wasn't the fact that we were late. Yeah. It wasn't even the fact that we'd rushed back from Edinburgh. Yeah. It wasn't the fact that we picked up as quickly as we can. It was the fact that you stopped at Gatwick Airport for a Cornish pasty during the emergency.
And most people thought that was quite a sensible thing to do. Yes. Because, the trouble with you is that if you don't eat at regular intervals, actually that's much worse for you.
I eat at regular intervals. You're absolutely right. If you have 6 small meals a day, it's better than having 3 big ones.
Yeah, well, it is good.
Or 2 big ones.
I don't eat massive amounts of food.
Honestly. I don't eat massive amounts of foods either. Now, the other issue, which we have to, in our review of our shows so far this week, and in particular yesterday's...
I didn't know we were reviewing the shows.
Well, we're reviewing the campaigns.
We're reviewing our own shows.
Yes. Right. Campaigns are important. Now, would you like to read out to the millions of people currently listening the overall result of the poll about the flip-flops?
We already did that yesterday.
Yeah, but I think we should remind people.
We did it last night.
No, I think we should remind people.
We got to the end of the show and we announced the result of the poll.
But people have kept voting. People have kept voting.
No, they can't. The poll's closed.
I think we should tell people.
No, you see, you're obsessed with it only because you actually seem to think that you have some kind of minor victory.
No, I had a massive majority. A massive majority.
I think it was 54 to 46.
No, it wasn't. It was 56 to...
That would be 44.
44. Then. Yeah, how about that?
Are you sure?
How about that? That's massive. In a general election...
I don't want to go backwards.
In a general election, I've given a majority of 180 seats. How about that?
Well, in a general election in this country?
Yes.
Yes, not in every country.
In this country, you fool. This is where I live. This is where we work. This is where we broadcast to.
I know it's very rare for you to actually have a victory of any kind in any kind of competition.
I think the audience would like to know because you know why?
You just told them the result.
Do you know why?
Why?
It puts a marker down. It says that when I launch a campaign, I go down the old Fleet Street route, and the editor's Fleet Street route was this. Never start a campaign, you're not going to win.
Yeah, but you do that all the time.
What?
For example, you started a campaign to free Tommy the Chimp. How's that going?
Well, it's ongoing.
Yeah, but he's still not free, is
It's ongoing.
But that's been going on for 2 years.
It's ongoing.
You also started campaigns for all sorts of other things which haven't worked.
Like what?
Well, there's been all sorts of things you've been trying to ban.
Well, you say all sorts of things, but I mean, that is...
Well, because they're so inconsequential that there's no point getting into them.
No, it's higgledy-piggledy.
The fact that you've now finally got the voice of talkRADIO behind you with people that said, people who wear flip-flops are completely and utterly ridiculous.
They're
not at a beach.
They're rubbish people.
That's fine, but that was yesterday's show.
Yeah.
We don't want to do it now.
Well, you said it was yesterday's show, I know, but the point is, sometimes when, for instance, in the Porky review tonight, the TV review...
Yes, Porky Vision it's called.
Porky Vision, that's right. I will look back on things as well as look forward.
Yeah.
Now, when you come to a great programme like that, and I class our show here now as a great programme, you sometimes remind people how the last programme ended, and morph that into the new programme. You see what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
So I just think it's important because we will get people contacting us again tonight about the flip-flop campaign launched by Porky Parry and very, very successfully carried through to a very positive result. We will get people talking about that tonight. So I just wanted to remind the audience what it was all about.
Well, you've already done that, haven't you? William says this, autumn starts and varies between the 21st and 23rd of September. So I don't know where you got the idea that it was the 1st and the 2nd.
Well, no, but September is an autumn month. It's not a summer month.
Well, the beginning of September can often be a summer month.
No, totally
For example,
disagree.
Children do not go back to school until September.
Well, I don't care what...
And that's the end of the summer holidays.
I don't care what the specifics say. I can tell you this. When we all grow up, we know this. We know that winter is, generally speaking, November, December, January and February. We know that spring is March and April and May. We know that summer is June, July and August.
Yeah, possibly.
And we know that autumn is September and October and the first part of November.
Okay, so you don't prefer to split the year up into 4 quarters? Then?
No, not at all. No. The seasons run over the quarterly calendar, if you see what I mean.
Which is why I think you would be right to say that summer goes about halfway into September.
What? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. No. We're in autumn when September begins, and we're out of autumn at the end of the second week.
Well, if you were to take the summer solstice,
November.
right? The summer solstice, which is the longest day,
June 21,
is June 21.
Yeah.
Now, is that in the middle of summer or not?
Well, it's the longest day.
It should be. So it should be in the middle of summer.
No, it shouldn't. No, it's the longest day.
Well, the longest day surely is in the middle of summer.
No, but the longest...
Because that is the peak of the summer months.
No.
Why would a day which is not the longest day be not in the middle of summer?
Well, I'm afraid it's just the way that the Earth moves around. But you know as well as I do that June 21 is actually only the first 3 weeks of summer in this country.
Right.
And the worst and most oppressive heat is yet to come.
Yes, but
it's nowhere near the middle.
But in terms of hours of daylight, that's when it starts to recede.
Yeah, I think we should change all that, because
when we were up in summer solstice elsewhere.
When we were up in Edinburgh, we were driving around there. Well, we had a driver, didn't we? Actually, he was driving us around.
Yeah, it's called a taxi driver.
The guy who driving the big one. Yeah, the big vehicle.
Oh, the big vehicle.
Yeah, the big vehicle.
Yeah, well, at the end.
At the end. Yeah, we don't want to talk about that. But anyway, the point of the story is. You then told a story saying that you used to go out and play golf at 10 o'clock at night.
Well, I was often out playing golf at 10 o'clock at night. I could start a game at about 8:30.
Well, there you go.
And play 18
holes.
There you
go. So how unusual is that?
In Scotland, not very unusual at all.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So,
I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what your argument is.
Well, my argument is this. That I don't care what the calendar says about which season you're in.
Right.
I'm telling you...
But you've just told me September is the beginning of autumn.
It is, definitely.
So you said you didn't care what calendar tells you.
No. You're trying to tell me some load of, Biloxios, as we call it, on an evening show, family show, an adult show, that June the 21st is the height of summer. A load of nonsense.
Well, I'm saying that because it is the longest day, it should be the height of summer.
Well, it's not.
But it isn't, is it?
It's not.
And by the same token, September and the start of it should not be the end of summer, because it is simply not that black and white.
Well, it is.
I know that doesn't work out well for you. No. Somebody calling himself Porky's housekeeper has tweeted saying,
yes.
I think we should review who won the 4 series of winners and losers.
The 4 series of winners and losers?
Yeah, that would be me.
Excuse me, that was a different era, on a different station, with a different structure to it. Mm-hmm. And before I got down to curtailing the enormous amount of gerrymandering which has gone on over the years.
Now, speaking of which, we might talk about the junior doctor strike, which is coming up in a little while. We will talk a bit about Princess Diana.
Sorry, why do you want to talk about that for?
Well, because it's in the news today, and part of what we do here is we talk about what's going on in the news. There's been a lot of news stories going on today. I know that you've probably been too busy with your head stuck in your journals to notice. But there's a few big stories out there.
I think it's disgraceful.
Theresa May has come out as well and said we have to make Brexit work.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what majority of the British people said, didn't they, in the referendum?
Yeah.
I do think it's disgraceful that doctors have become a politically active body. And they have. Because, you look at Newsnight or something like that, and Newsnight is a BBC programme. People at the BBC have admitted over the years, yes, we're a left-leaning organisation. And when you see some of the people they bring on there, the doctors they bring on aren't doctors, they're professional politicians.
Well, the BMA is a union organisation.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is.
There's no point calling it anything else.
No point calling it anything else. Say, and do you know what they do? They're honestly, they're so insincere. They always say, well, our first concern is patient safety.
Yeah. Patient
security. No, it's not. Do you know what it is? It's not even the money you get, because you get paid very well as doctors. You know what it is? It's having a political influence on the country. We intend...
You see the time, by the way.
Banging our political drum. And do you know why?
Why?
It's the same as actors. What they think is, we're a privileged member of society, so we've got to show all the time that we are caring. We are a caring profession.
Yeah.
Actors want to be a caring profession. Doctors want to be a caring profession. Doctors actually are a caring profession because they take the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah.
And take the Hippocratic Oath means you've got to save lives.
Yeah.
So they already are a caring profession. Why do they then have to start proving to everybody else that we are going to be a double caring profession by not only caring for people, but then talking about caring for people as well?
Well, it's not so much that. It's about when they're up against the Tory government. That's when it starts to get really hairy, and we shall talk some more about this. As I said, it's worth doing. Lord Rallo says, I don't care what specifics say. El Plenko has never made a truer statement, telling Porky's Mr. Parry. We are the two Mikes. He's Mike Parry, I'm Mike Graham. We've got lots to talk about tonight. Porky Vision coming up as well. We're going to be talking to Adrian Tinniswood, author of By Permission of Heaven, the story of the Great Fire of London. Also, we're going to be talking about to a psychologist about comedians, because obviously, excuse me,
is your voice all right there?
My voice is going to be fine, I think.
Are you sure? You're going to get through the show?
Well, I'm going to try to. I'm going to try to, I don't like to take time off.
I'll tell you what's probably a good idea, because the audience prefer it, is let me do most of the talking.
No, actually, the audience don't prefer that. One of the reasons that the two Mikes are so successful is that we're more successful than you were on your own, because they get sick to death of hearing your voice. But anyway, we've got a very important person to talk to now, a man called Nick Tolson, Director of National Church Watch, because he's got some concerns about, as you were saying earlier to James Max, what is going on in the places of worship around this country, and why they're going to need some serious security. Nick, a very good evening to you. Welcome.
Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, very well.
Very well, thank you.
Very well indeed. Thanks very much for joining us. Now, we all know about the sort of the rash of thefts that have happened at churches over the years, and how many churches now are no longer open when they would perhaps like to stay open for people just to wander in and have a look. But this is a slightly more serious problem, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've always looked at these incidents. We've always encouraged churches to open, actually. An open church is a lot safer than a closed church, to be honest. But obviously, since the attack in France, where the priest was murdered, that's sadly opened up another avenue that we just have to consider. The risk level has gone up a little bit more. No, it's still very low, but it is something that has happened. Therefore, we have to try and give some ideas to churches as to what to do.
That's right. The thing is, Nick, that already churches, certainly the Church of England anyway in this country, I don't know about other religions, but they are battling to try and get more people to fill the pews, and this isn't going to help, is it? Because if you put yet another sort of shadow over church attendance, and it could be, as you quite rightly say, a very, very minuscule threat of trouble happening at the churches, it's another blow against the freedom to worship.
Well, you're the first one to bring that up today, which is quite impressive. I think the effect on people attending church, actually, my gut feeling, actually, it will increase attendance to church.
Sorry, how will that work?
Well, I think people will support the churches.
Yeah.
A lot of people, call themselves Christian but don't necessarily attend church.
Yes.
And therefore, when their local church, is having to think about some of the more, difficult aspects of opening a building, hopefully that it will support, they'll come in and support their church. Even if they don't go on a Sunday morning to a service, they might want to come in and be able to sit in there for an hour or to help them out from there. And we're seeing that in certainly in rural areas. We're seeing a lot of that where the local community they don't want their church to shut, and that's what'll happen if they don't support their church. It'll just close. So we're seeing a lot of people coming in and helping churches, even though the people don't necessarily attend that church.
Yes, I understand that.
When you say an open church is a safer church, Nick, I mean, presumably
no, it is.
It's not possible for churches to remain open, for large sections of the day, is it? I mean, if they've got some kind of service going on, fine, but...
It's a complete misnomer to say that if you lock your church, you're going to be safer. We've done lots of studies on this, lots of research on this, and it's absolutely clear that if you open your church during the day, that people start using the building. They'll come in for their lunch, they'll walk their dogs, they'll do this. And they've got eyes and they've got phones, so that if anyone's in there, the most of the difficult problem is vandalism and theft of metal and things like that.
Yeah.
That means they've got eyes and they report the crime. Whereas if you've got a locked church, people just don't visit it. Therefore, your criminals have lots of time to break in there and do what they like. So we're absolutely 100% for opening churches.
No, I totally agree with you on this one. Whenever I see a church and it's got a padlock on the door, and then you talk to the local community later and say, some silver was stolen from the vestry or something like that. I totally agree with you. You've just got to keep that church open. There's one church in Surrey where I do a lot of walking around the sort of North Downs, and it's next to a fish and chip shop. And the local vicar there is never happier than when people who are ramblers and those sort of people, go to the fish and chip shop next door and then come into the churchyard, sit there and have their fish and chips, and then enjoy the grounds of the church and that sort of thing,
Absolutely, 100%. And the trouble is that the people who are making the decision to close the churches have absolutely no idea about what the real problem is. They're guessing. They're making it up as they go along. Yeah. And this is true with the advice that we're giving now about counter-terrorism and things, that people are making it up on the fly. They're not basing it on facts. They're not basing it on the experiences that the French have had and the Americans, of course, who have had a lot of issues for a very long time.
Yep.
And the key thing with our advice is that it's based on research and it's based on experience. It's not just making it up as you go along.
But say, for example, because of what happened in France, and you have to try and take into account all possibilities, which in this day and age of lone wolf attacks is very difficult. Yeah. Are you saying that you will have to have bouncers on the doors when, say, for example, there is a service going on?
Yeah, thank you, the Daily Telegraph, for doing that for me. Bouncers are not mentioned at all in my report anywhere. What I say is you must have somebody on the door to welcome people, and then we know that when people commit very, very serious offences, i.e. they come in with a knife or a gun, they will very often carry it openly as they walk up the road. And if somebody can see that, somebody coming up the steps holding a weapon or a knife, you need to be able to shut that door and just slam it shut to give you a few minutes just to get everybody out of the church. Now, that person, we've had it for years in the church. In the Church of England, they're called vergers. Yeah. They're a medieval role. That's what, medieval people knew how to look after their churches. This is nothing new. This is all old stuff. So what I'm saying is that you just need someone on the door. It doesn't have to be a paid nightclub staff member.
No, absolutely.
No, but it's obviously going to be better if they are more trained in that kind of thing, though. I mean, if somebody's going to come up the road with an AK-47, you don't want some old guy from Dad's Army standing there, do you?
Don't you believe it? We do not want to confront these people.
No.
We do have not a lot of trouble. We have had cases in the past where people think they can deal with these issues. Somebody walks up with an AK-47 or with a machete, you cannot deal with it. The police can deal with it. Yeah. And you have to get to the idea. It's really simple. It's a very, very simple system. The idea is that you run. If you can't run, you hide. and you must get the police there, because in the end, they're the guys who are going to deal with this. If you can delay that person getting into the church by slamming the door shut and putting a bolt on, it might only delay them for 2 minutes, but in that 2 minutes, you can run a very long way. You know, even if you're old or you've got kids or whatever, you can get out. And that's the advice, is you know, in these very, very serious situations, run and keep on running.
Absolutely. And Nick, the thing is that, you know, the Church of England is by no means the first to have thought of this idea. I mean, for years, synagogues have had security measures, rather low-key, you know, not bouncers standing on doors, but very aware of the fact that, you know...
I imagine mosques must have as well.
And mosques, I'm certain. So the Church of England really is only catching up with other religions, isn't it?
No, not at all. You know, we've worked with the Jewish Security Trust. We've worked with the Muslim area for many, many, many years. The difference is when you have a synagogue and you have a mosque and a temple and a gurdwara, they usually just open for their services and then they shut it again.
Oh, I see.
They're not public buildings. Christian churches in general, and we're talking about the parish churches now, not your chapels and things that are shut. We're talking about your parish churches. What we want them, they're open when there's not services.
Yeah, I
and
see.
That's the difference. So,
and what about sort of the more high-profile churches like St Paul's Cathedral, you know, Westminster Abbey, that kind of thing? I mean, presumably they're having to take even more kind of stringent measures as well, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Home Office and the police have identified, you know, the higher risk targets, which include all those, you know, what we call the greater churches. And they are very often included in the plans that the police have, which, of course, they've made for, you know, should a situation. In fact, you know, those police officer the other day said, you know, we know this is going to happen. It's going to happen in the UK somewhere. We just don't know where, so we're prepared. So places like London, you know, Birmingham and Bristol and that, they have these security plans. They have the police in place, and should an incident occur, you'll get a very, very quick police response. Yeah. The difficulty is, what if you're in the middle of Somerset? What if you're in the middle of, you know, down the road? Rouen, where the French church was not in the city centre.
No, exactly.
It will take time for the police arriving. You're talking 15 or 20 minutes, and that's a very long time when you've got a bloke in front of you with a knife.
Indeed it is.
Certainly is. Yeah. Worrying times, but Nick, thank you very much indeed for explaining what it is that you think churches need to do without getting too carried away and turning them into sort of RoboCop-type organisations and places where nobody can get anywhere near. Loads and loads of texts and tweets coming in. William says this autumn starts varying between the 21st and 23rd of September. Tomo says last day of summer is 21st of September. That night is the autumn equinox. So that is more or less what I was saying.
Well, I don't accept
says this.
I don't accept
You don't accept it. No. I'm with Mike Parry. Autumn is my favourite time of the year. And he says, great to listen to them live, the two mics live, for a change.
Yes, thank you very much.
Lots of questions for you about Princess Diana as well. We were both kind of involved in that story in quite a big way, which we may get into very shortly. We are the two mics. We are the two Mikes. He's Mike Parry, I'm Mike Graham. Porky Vision coming up a little bit later on. A celebration of all that is great and sometimes not so great on our home television screens. Porky, of course, will be telling us all about why he's so concerned about the protection of churches in a moment. And we will talk about our dual roles in different situations and on the anniversary of Princess Diana's death. Now, exactly 19 years ago since she died in that tunnel.
Unbelievable.
Along with Dodie Fried and her driver, Henri Paul. Peter in Glasgow, who sent us a text last night about Mr. Jeremy Corbyn. I think he was the one that said, stick your head out the window and smell the change in the wind.
Yes.
He says, tell Porky, in protest at your rant at Corbyn in flip-flops last night, I went straight to Primark today for a pair of bright red ones for the long march. I don't know whether there's some kind of long march being planned.
The long march?
But if you're marching for a long time in flip-flops, your feet will look like two bloodied stumps, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it will, believe me. And the long march is, I tell you what the long march is famous for in historical terms. Yeah. It's Chairman Mao, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Didn't they have the long march on what was then Peking?
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody wanted to be in it.
Beijing. No. The long march is a very provocative political statement. Yeah. It means basically the people taking over the country.
Yeah, well, all these communists are always saying things like that. They're always saying, this is going to happen. We're going to, when the day comes, you're all going to be put up against the wall and shot. You know, because that's what they like.
Most of them in the long march jumped on the back of lorries, by the way. You know, they're all frauds.
Yeah, they love all that. Yeah. They love all that. Anyway, listen, I'm very fascinated by your interest in the last guest, the director of National Church Watch. Are you a member of that organisation?
No, of course I'm not.
Why not?
Well, why should I be?
It's an independent organisation that provides advice on crime and security for places of worship. Seems to me it's a perfect job for you.
I'm not a crime and security expert. However, I'm a practising Christian.
Are you?
So I go to church when I can.
When was the last time you went to church?
About
I mean, any time this year? I don't think you've...
No,
I mean, you and I have worked most Sundays
No, I haven't been this year, no. I think it was about 3 years ago.
So you're not much of a practising Christian?
Oh, no, I am. No, I like to do it.
Practice makes perfect.
If I get a spare Sunday morning and there's a church around, I'll go.
Well, you normally do have a spare Sunday morning.
No, I could be on...
What were you doing last Sunday morning, for example? You could have gone to church.
I don't think so. I was in Scotland with you.
Yeah, well, they have churches in Scotland.
Yeah,
but the Church of Scotland.
Yeah, yes, I know that. But as we didn't get home until 5:30 after our wonderful second show, was it?
Second show
in
Saturday night. Yeah,
at the Edinburgh Festival.
Yeah, but you could have got up at say 7:30, 8 o'clock, which is what you said you did.
I don't think it's fair to go into a church because whenever I go to a church, I always go immediately and make myself known to the vicar.
Why?
Or the deacon or somebody in the church.
Or the verger.
The verger. No, not the verger. Usually, I like to go to the top man. The guy who's giving the sermon. I always give them always give them tips and advice on their sermon.
They must love you
on delivery as well. Well, we're professional communicators. We're professional broadcasters.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
And I always say to I always say to the vicar, seriously, I say, "Hi, Vic, how you doing?" No, seriously, yeah. And what's your sermon about today? And they look at me a little bit puzzled. I said, "No, don't worry, I'm a professional communicator." Yeah. And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, look, give it delivery." I said, "Give it from the abdomen." You know what I mean?
Right.
Don't just go up on that. What do they call it? The pulpit. Yeah. And whisper to your flock. Your flock need to be impressed by what you've got to say.
I once went to a wedding in North Wales, funnily enough. I think it would be would it be the Dee Valley up there?
Oh, the Dee Valley is
very beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. But do you know which town you were in?
I can't remember what town it was.
No, okay.
But it was a friend of mine who was a top photographer who was getting married.
If it's North Wales, it could have been Llangollen.
Yeah, it wasn't that. No, definitely wasn't that. But the vicar was a woman, right?
Yes.
I don't think it was real.
A lot of female vicars.
A lot of female vicars, yeah. But the most ridiculous thing happened, and my kids couldn't believe it, and we called her from that point on the slapstick vicar, because as she was in the middle of giving her sermon, this big board that was behind her literally fell on her head. and it knocked her.
News.
And because she was in the pulpit, she wasn't a very large woman. It knocked her underneath the point where you could see her.
Yeah,
so she actually was then, you couldn't see where she was. And she sort of crawled back out and appeared again, but it completely ruined the sermon.
Well, I think I told you.
How can you take that sort of person seriously?
Well, you can't, but I mean, that's just unfortunate circumstances. But I think I told you, and I'm not sure if it was on our show here or not, that the vicar at my sister's wedding, that's my elder sister.
Yes.
She got married later in life.
Sue Ellens.
Yes, for tax purposes.
Such a romantic story.
Yeah.
She got married for tax purposes.
Well, no, I mean, quite seriously.
Was it a love match?
No.
It was purely so that they could fill out one tax return.
No.
That's a shocking thing to say.
Well, no, I mean, look, it's practical.
Yeah, but it's not very romantic.
Loads of people live together all their lives. And
but did they go on a honeymoon or anything?
Yeah, of course they did. It was all very...
Did they go somewhere offshore?
I'm not sure, but it was pragmatic and sensible and that kind of stuff. But the point is that without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, the vicar was intoxicated.
Oh yes, I think you have told me the story.
He fell down the steps coming into the reception,
right,
and then threw a paddy because he assumed that he and his wife would have a seat at one of the tables at the reception. He'd be a cherished guest.
Yes.
And it wasn't a huge reception. I mean, it was very nice. It was very, very well done.
A couple of accountants making sure everything was done the right way.
No. It was just very, very nice. and they had friends, long-standing friends, and all that. But the vicar wasn't exactly a friend. So, and he threw a paddy when he realised that he didn't have a six-course
vicars and priests in general quite like to get involved in a marriage because they love going to the reception, don't they? I mean, that's part of the perks of the job.
Exactly. But
But anyway, you could have gone. No matter what you say, you could have still had maybe 4 or 5 hours sleep, and you say you don't need more than that, and you could have still made a kind of 11 o'clock service.
I believe I was too intoxicated to properly represent myself. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
really?
Because we came on stage about 12:15, and we left. Where were we that night?
We were in the Pleasance kind of bar, weren't we?
What was it? Assembly rooms. Assembly rooms is the theatre.
Yeah.
We're in a bar there, weren't we?
Right.
Which, by the way, to get into, you had to walk down this strange tunnel with black and white checks on the floor, the ceiling, the walls, and it gave you vertigo.
It was very interesting.
And you started walking backwards.
Yeah.
And you couldn't remember where the door was.
It was like one of those old Pink Floyd albums.
It was like...
Or a Yes album.
It was like The Prisoner. Remember Patrick McGowan and The Prisoner? You will go into the checkered room.
Yeah.
And you go in the checkered room, you literally...
I'm not a number, I'm a free man.
And then you can't find the door.
Yeah.
Because what they did is, the door was somewhere in the wall, but because they crafted it so cleverly, you couldn't find the door to get out.
Yeah.
It did drive me a bit nuts, though.
It was a bit mad, that, wasn't it? Yeah, but quite enjoyable nonetheless.
Yeah. Yes.
A couple of other tweets for you. One from Manny here. He says, what's Porky going on about? Has he had any sleep, and how many cans of Red Bull has he drunk?
What? I haven't had Red Bull, actually, for years.
Yeah.
Why? What is that
I think that was referring to your
correspondent...
ranting about the summer months and all the rest of it.
I see.
And when autumn begins. Rodney says, with all the life-saving work they have done on Porky, I thought you would be supporting the doctors of Harefield Hospital.
Well, I do. I support the doctors of Harefield Hospital. Harefield is a wonderful institution, absolutely wonderful. But it seems to me that this doctor movement is being led by junior doctors, not, excuse me, the very senior consultants that I'm lucky enough to have access to keep my heart going.
Somebody calling himself Green Shirt says, Porky's wrong again. Only 16 million voted for Brexit. Remain got 15 million, and non-voters were 13 million.
Yeah, well, that's usual.
So it goes hashtag not a majority. Well, you can't start mealy-mouthing around about democracy. I mean, certain people vote.
Everybody has the right to vote.
Some people don't bother to vote. Yeah. A majority is a majority of those who voted, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the majority of those who voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
Which, incidentally, is something that neither Porky or I thought would happen or actually particularly wanted to happen.
Exactly.
Before you start getting all, weird about it.
Exactement.
Because people do, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I mean, in Australia, by the way, that's interesting, that, because we're going to try and talk to Sandra, aren't we, over the next week or so?
Well, I keep trying to get a hold of her, but I keep missing the time zone. No, she's tweeting, but I'm not sure where she is.
Okay, well, she's our correspondent in Australia, and it'd be very interesting, actually, to talk about that, because, of course, in Australia, it's compulsory to vote, isn't it?
It is indeed,
You get fined if you don't vote.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that's a very good way of doing it.
Yes, I do as well, actually.
Because it means that basically everybody does have to go out and you have to take part in the democratic process, even if you abstain. I think there is a box whereby you can tick it.
Oh, is that right?
But as long as you actually physically go out and vote.
I don't think referendum would come under that policy, though, would it? Because referendum is not a general election.
No, it's not. And you can't. And also, you can, I mean, I'm not sure that I would want to go down that road. I'm not sure you want to force people to vote. I think that doesn't really, aid
the only thing that worries me is we've had a lot of kind of train troubles in the metropolis.
Train troubles?
Over the last few months.
What
right?
you mean, trains that
strikes?
Oh, strikes
on strike.
Okay.
And you know what? When you examine the figures, you will always find that sometimes an action which affects millions, literally millions and millions of travellers, millions and millions of commuters, is sometimes decided by a cabal of about 60 or 70 people who just happen to work the union voting policy to their own advantage.
Well, certainly quite often
and because
it is a very small majority.
Absolutely.
It's a majority of those who voted, but a very, very small number of people actually
Exactly.
vote.
And if the majority would only wake up, and sometimes it's due to alleged intimidation. Sometimes it's due to the fact that they don't actually know these votes are
well, it's not
going
they don't
on.
know, but a lot of them don't actually care. They just want to get on with it.
Yeah.
But then you can't have it both ways.
You can't get on with it if you're on strike.
Yeah, but if you're going to say that you must allow people not to bother voting if they don't want to, you can't have one rule for strikes and another rule for parliamentary democracy. It has to be the same one, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, I think Cromwell got that right. Cromwell got it right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't like the fact that Cromwell closed down the theatres, but he was known as the Great Protector.
It wouldn't be much fun for us, would it?
Oh, it wouldn't be. No. But I tell you what was fun. When Cromwell finally fell off his perch and they decided, right, let's have the Restoration. Because I studied all this, you see, for A-level English. Yeah.
Did you?
They had the Restoration comedies.
Why would you have studied for A-level English?
What?
Why would you have studied it for A-level English?
The Restoration comedies.
Wouldn't you have studied it for A-level history?
No. This is English literature I'm talking about. The Restoration comedies were great works of English literature.
Like who was one of the writers of one of those?
What?
You always get this look on your face when you've asked a question you don't know the answer to.
Richard Donne.
Richard Donne. You just made that up.
D-O-N-N-E.
Richard Donne.
Donne, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the title of one of his plays then?
It was. You
don't know, do you?
Yes, it was. It was.
You don't know.
With Thee. With Thee.
With Thee.
With Thee, I think
by
it was
Richard
called.
Donne.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, honestly. Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you were out of time.
Yeah.
Because if you look into the light.
We better go to a break then.
Yeah, we better have. Yeah, we try not to say that word, but never mind. We are the two mics. We are the two mics. We're here with you throughout this week from 7 to 10 and next week as well from 7 to 10. So
we are indeed.
We might get quite used to this.
But it's only Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
That's right. It is.
Sadly, we can't do Fridays.
Well, we can't. No.
But
I've got to go to see my children at some point. Otherwise, I might forget who I am.
No, I think that's very
noble. May in their case not be a bad thing.
Very noble thought. Yeah. And I need to, get down to
and
the
dog as well. I mean, the dog has. All I've seen of the dog, right, is when we came back from Mallorca.
And you released him from his prison cage.
I released him from his very, very luxurious former home and put him in a car.
Yeah.
Drove him halfway around the M25. and then gave him over to the mother of my children and my children to take the rest of the way because they had to come in and do a show here. Exactly. So I haven't really seen him properly.
Okay.
But he was delighted to see me, I have to say.
I would say so.
I'm looking forward to...
Well, you say that.
I'm looking forward to, getting reacquainted with him.
Jolly good. Yeah. Now, it's the anniversary of the sad death of Diana, Princess of Wales.
That's right, yeah.
That was her official title, Everybody called her Lady Diana, right. They called her Princess Diana.
Yeah.
Her title was Diana, Princess of Wales.
Hard to believe 19 years have passed, isn't it?
Well, that's amazing, because I was there that night.
Now, you were in a very different role in those days, weren't you?
I was running the Press Association.
Yes.
Literally, and it's the biggest national news agency in the world.
Yeah.
It's not the biggest news agency, that's Reuters or AP or, the ones that we've worked with, UPI and all that kind of stuff. But as an individual news agency serving its country,
yes, a domestic
news
one,
agency, biggest in the world.
And it used to be, and I'm not sure if it still is, because things have changed over the years, it used to be sort of wholly owned, did it not, by all the other news organisations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about 8 different organisations had 12% of it or something like that.
Right.
Not that it was ever made money or anything, but
but they kept it going.
They kept it going. They funded it, and the whole idea is if you have a national news agency, then for smaller stories that you don't think you want to send individual reporters out on, the Press Association cover them.
Cover the courts.
They cover the courts and everything.
They have political correspondence.
Not only that, in those days there were like 1,000 regional newspapers in this country who couldn't possibly have afforded to go to the Old Bailey and cover big trials like the Yorkshire Ripper and all that. So they drew on the
they did that.
On the Press Association.
And they would have a royal correspondent and all that as well.
Oh, I mean, the royal correspondent of the Press Association was the most important royal correspondent of the lot because the Press Association over the years, over the hundreds of years, built a reputation for absolute accuracy. Yeah. So if there was ever going to be a release from Buckingham Palace, from Kensington Palace, anything to do with Prince Charles or whatever, it came out through the Press Association.
Right.
And that was the way it was.
So, and one of the most amazing things as well, when you think back, and as we tell the stories of what we were doing on that particular evening, is the difference in the way that news now is disseminated. Because back then, there weren't that many sources for news, were there?
No, there weren't, no. I'll tell you,
you couldn't pick up your phone and look on it and see what was going on.
Well, it is part of the story, really, actually, is this, that I was watching Match of the Day at home.
Yeah.
It was a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And, I'd had quite a hard week, and I was really looking... I'd had a few sherbets, and I was looking forward to a Sunday with the family, actually.
Well, because it had been crazy already in Paris, hadn't it? Because there'd been that famous photograph of her in the Mediterranean on the end of that yacht. She was with Dodi Fayed, which was already a kind of a scandal.
All the newspapers had people on boats, ferrying around the Mediterranean trying to find Diana. I mean, you and I did a lot of that in America. I spent a lot of time on a boat in Barbados trying to find her when she was on a yacht there and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, the point of the story is, I got a call about 11 o'clock, and it was my guy who was the night news editor at the Press Association, and he said, news is breaking out of Paris about Diana. I said, what is it? He said, there's been a car crash. I said, a car crash, right, and what's happened? He said, well, we think Dodi Fayed is dead. I said, goodness gracious me. I said, this is very dramatic.
Right. Or worse to that effect, probably.
Yeah, exactly. And I said, and Diana? He said, she's got a broken arm and lacerations to her thigh. Right. Very strange diagnosis, but that was the news coming out, Right. I said, right. So anyway, I said, send a car, because we had a car account or whatever.
Yeah.
So they sent a car, and I got in the shower and got out again. And I thought, this is going to be a long night. Anyway, got in, and slowly stuff was coming in. I was very lucky that night because the defence correspondent of the Press Association, again, hugely regarded, had been asked to go with
Robin Cook,
on a Far East tour and then report back, on everything that was happening. So Robin Cook and Charlie, and I can't for the life of me think of Charlie's surname, but he won loads of awards for this.
Right.
He was with Robin Cook, and they were in Malaysia. And when you say about mobile phones, he'd gone on tour for the first time with a mobile phone.
Right.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I said, give me the number. So we rang, and we didn't know what was going to happen. Anyway, we rang, and the phone answered. I don't even know what the time difference was. And I said, Charlie, it's Mike here. I said, I'm in the office in London. He said, what are you doing there? He said, it must be after midnight. I said, yeah. I said, it's 1 a.m. I said, look, and I outlined the story to him. He said, crikey, that's amazing. I said, so look, you're with Robin Cook. He's the Foreign Secretary. Yeah. Now, what I did know was she was on foreign soil. Diana she was in France. So that meant that actually the person that the French government would inform, protocol was they had to inform the British Foreign Secretary, not the British Prime Minister, not the British Queen. Right. The Foreign Secretary of France had to inform the Foreign Secretary of Great Britain. Yeah. I said, so you've got to keep very close and find out what's going on. Right. We had 4 or 5 conversations over the next hour and a half.
And were the reports that you were seeing coming in by correspondence that you had, or were they coming in from television reports?
They were coming in mostly from the BBC, because the BBC had a huge staff in France, and this happened in Paris. Yeah. That's where their base was. Right. Mostly from the BBC, although Sky, which was in its infancy 19 years ago, had 1 or 2 correspondents. We were watching that, sort of 24-hour television. A lot of it was on the wires, from AP and UPI and Agence Presse France, which is another big international agency. And the situation seemed to get more and more serious because nobody was issuing a bulletin on Diana. Right. We knew that, sadly, very sadly, Dodi Fayed, the son of Mohammed Al Fayed, had died. We knew that. And anyway, I said, Charlie, you've got to just stick next to the Foreign Secretary, Robin Cook. Robin Cook. I said, just stick with that. I said, because, anything's going to happen there. Anyway, after a series of conversations, he said, I've just had a word with Cook's main man, his number 1 aide. And I said, he said, I think Diana's dead. Right. And it hit you like a bolt out of the blue. I mean, it really did. I said, what? He said, I think she's died. I think that the reason there's no bulletin on her condition is I think the French government are preparing to announce that Diana's died. Yeah. And he said Robin Cook himself has been locked in a room for 20 minutes on a secure line phone to Paris. Because
the intermediate story I seem to remember was that she had a broken neck at first, and that
I never heard broken neck. Yeah. I had broken arm. I had lacerated. I don't know why I said lacerated thigh. It's like she'd been thrust into the seat in front of her or something. Yeah. And anyway, I said, look, the minute you've got... Anyway, 2 minutes later, on your back, he said, Mike, she is dead. I said, Charlie, could you don't ask your own correspondence sources. He said, Robin Cook himself. Yeah. I said, you spoke to Robin Cook? He said, yeah. I said, right, thank you. Bang, put the phone down. Now, I was in a dilemma then, because I knew that Diana, Princess of Wales, was dead. Yeah. And the rest of the world didn't.
And they weren't reporting it.
They were not reporting it, and I also had an editor at home in bed who wasn't aware of any of this.
So you hadn't woken him up yet?
No, because I knew that he would put the he would try and pull the story back, and I was a flamboyant but very safe journalist. But I was nowhere in the world I was going to stop this story from being broken by the Press Association. Right. So
it's quite a responsibility, though, isn't it?
It was huge. So I knew that if I put a release out...
How long did you walk around for before you decided to do it?
Only 3 minutes, because I thought somebody else might get it. Yeah. And I scribbled down a version of events, and I got the night editor to come over. The guy was going to have to actually press the button and put it out. And I was thinking it might be a revolt, and he might say, I won't, because he knew how to electronically send it, and I didn't from his desk and not mine. And eventually I came up with Diana, Princess of Wales, has died... according to British government sources with whom the Press Association have been in touch tonight. Yeah. And that was it. Yeah. And I said...
So that's what they call a snap, isn't it?
A snap. Absolutely
so
right.
That's all you put out?
That's all I put out. Yeah. And I said, are you happy with that,
did you have to start ringing people to bring them into the office?
Well, not really. We'd already sent half a dozen people to France. I mean, that was the first thing. But
just in terms of having people in the office in London.
Well, I mean, it was so mad. Yeah. People. I mean, this is a great thing about our profession. Yeah. People had started turning up. Yeah. Reporters had woken up and heard and just literally put on their clothes and started turning up. Yeah. Everybody wanted to be a part of this story, And funnily enough, the night was named Mike. Yeah. There's too many Mikes in the world, isn't there? And I said, that's what I'm sending. He said, are you happy to go with it? Not once did he say, do you think we should ring up the editor? And I said, no. I said, look, you ring up the editor who's been fast asleep while this has developed over the last 4 hours. He's going to want a review of it for the next 2 hours. I said, I'm not having that. Right. I said, we've got it. We know it. I'm certain. I believe in Charlie. Send it. He said, OK, you're the boss. Right. Bang, and he sent it. Yeah. And the panic that went round the world then was extraordinary.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, our phones, they just never stopped ringing, for the next hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. 17 minutes later, Monsieur Chauvenement, I'll never forget him.
You remember his name, yeah.
I remember his name, Monsieur Chauvenement, who
was the Foreign Secretary in France.
Foreign Secretary in France, came out of the Palace of Versailles, stood there on the podium and all that, and announced to the world in French that, very sadly, I have to announce the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, who was involved in a car crash in a tunnel in Paris tonight, and I am, distraught to have to tell you she did not survive the crash. She died alongside Dodie Elfide and that kind of stuff. And he made a very brief statement and then turned around and went back in. And that was 17 minutes after I put the release out.
Right.
That was the longest 17 minutes of my life.
Yeah.
If I'd have got that wrong, I wouldn't be sitting here now.
No. No.
I'd have been exiled.
Right.
I'd have been finished.
You'd be living in St Helena or somewhere.
I would. I'd be living in St Helena. I would have gone.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that I didn't wait for the editor, because he definitely... I mean, he was a cautious man. He was a former political editor.
Yeah.
He was a guy who checked and
he would also
double-checked.
say that PA can't afford to get this wrong.
Well, PA couldn't afford to get it wrong. I would have destroyed PA's reputation as well as my own.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't ring him. And in fact, I did him a favour, because if I'd have told him and he'd have woken up and said, no, I want it double-check, treble-check, we'd have lost it to somebody else. Yeah. And now we'll go down in history as being, the organisation that released the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. Yeah. It was an extraordinary night. Yeah,
but it was an extraordinary night. I'll tell you my version of events coming up a little bit later on in the show, because we're very nearly at the end of the first hour of the show. You can text us, of course, here at Talk Radio. All you've got to do is text the word TALK plus your message to 87222. You might remember where you were when you heard that news, whether it came from Mike Parry's press agency, the PA, or whether it was on the radio, or whether it was on, in fact, the television as well. We've got the Porky Vision, a speciality coming up a little bit later on as well, where Porky reviews some of the TV shows he hasn't been seeing but thinks you should. And also, we're talking to a psychologist. It's always fun when we get them to ask questions about you as well. What? Do a little bit of probing, because you say, all comedians may be considered to be slightly round the bend. You would consider yourself to be a bit of a comedian, so you never know.
No, I don't.
That might actually be
I'm
something.
a serious broadcaster.
You're a serious broadcaster. Okay, well, we'll find out soon, because we are the two mics. We are the two mics. We're here, of course, from 7 till 10 all this week, apart from on Friday. And then we're back again on Monday, all the way through until Thursday as well. We're going to have a Porky quiz, which you should actually choose over the course of this show tonight to find out what the Porky quiz is going to be on Friday. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about the Great Fire of London. We'll have small memories of the night that Diana died 19 years ago. Very fascinating stuff there from Porky when he was running the PA. I'll be telling you about my role at the Express Newspapers Group as well. Lots more tweets to come in. You can tweet us at the two mics. Of course, we are the two mics. It's just been pointed out to me that since we're not here on Friday, we can't do the Porky quiz on Friday.
No, we can't do the Porky quiz on Friday.
So we have to do the Porky quiz tomorrow.
Well, no, it's not enough notice. I'm sorry.
Don't be ridiculous.
No,
you cannot weasel out of it now. You
can't
weasel out of it now. No, you must now choose a subject to do the Porky quiz on.
All right, well, I will before.
I mean, I would say the Fire of London, but we've already done one of the Fire of London. I think you got 2 out of 10.
Yeah, okay. Listen, I just want to say, I'll think about that. Don't worry.
All right.
This is so funny. Jack Wilshere has now signed for Bournemouth. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Somebody's just put out a tweet, which is so funny. I've got to show it to you.
Yeah, go on.
It says Jack Wilshere currently undergoing his medical at Bournemouth, and then it shows a bloke who looks a bit like Jack Wilshere on a running machine, and gradually as he's running he sort of trips and falls, and then the running machine falls to pieces and it's smashed all over the floor, then he's rolling around and his eggs in here.
That's one of those gifs.
And they're trying to make out that, poor old Jack Wilshere always seems to be injured. He got himself injured on his medical. But anyway, there you go.
And how about this from Rodney? It's the first time I've heard Mike Graham genuinely interested in what Porky's actually saying about the Diana story.
Yeah.
Well, I am genuinely interested. Even it's one of those things where two hacks get together and start telling stories. It's such a sort of magnetically massive story. Basically everybody in the world was writing that story on the front. I mean, she was the biggest star of whichever field you want to think about.
She's one of the most famous women ever.
I think she was the most famous woman ever.
I
don't think there's any doubt. I mean, one of the most strange things that happened during the sort of the days afterwards was that Mother Teresa died.
Yeah, that's right.
On, I think, the Wednesday after the Saturday.
No, I think. Do you know what? I think it was closer. I think it was almost like the same day.
It might have even been the Sunday or the Monday.
Yeah.
And I was in charge of the Express in those days in terms of production.
Yeah.
And we went, well, where are we going to put this? And we ended up doing a spread on Mother Teresa so far back in the paper.
That's right.
That it was almost as if it didn't happen.
I know.
Which you couldn't believe, because any other normal circumstance, she'd have been on the front page.
Yeah. The sense of mourning for Diana was absolutely remarkable. So the Press Association offices are in an area of London called Victoria, okay? And as you know, Mike, it was on what's the name of Bridge Road, just down the side of Victoria Station. The road goes down over the river. Vauxhall Bridge Road. Thank you. Yeah. So if you come out of there and you turn right and then go across the road, you go to Buckingham Palace Road, and then you turn right and work down to Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
Now, believe it or not, we were getting pictures and all this kind of stuff of people mourning at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
So I said, look, I'm going to go down and have a look myself. This was 2 days later.
Yeah.
Just as I crossed the road and got onto Buckingham Palace Road, and I must have been 300 or 400 yards away from Buckingham Palace, the smell of the air changed. instead of it smelling like London, like, fumes and all that, I started smelling flowers.
Yeah.
And I was about 400 yards away. And then as you got closer and closer to Buckingham Palace, you thought, I can't quite understand this. I'm not sure what's going on. As you then turned the road just to the railings in front of Buckingham Palace, it was the most remarkable sight. One of the most remarkable sights I've seen. The flowers that people had laid down, who travelled from all over the world to put flowers down in front of Buckingham Palace, stretched at least 400 or 500 yards away from the palace up the Mall. It was the most astonishing thing I've ever seen.
All the way across the roundabout, past the fountain and everything.
Absolutely. It was literally a sea of flowers.
And then Kensington Palace became the same effect, didn't it?
It did,
and in fact, there were people, today, I think, earlier on today, because it was the 19th anniversary, actually laying flowers at Kensington Palace. And the thing that I found amazing was people that I knew who were not particularly royalists, who didn't particularly like the royal family, didn't particularly, follow it in the papers, didn't watch, documentaries about it. They were coming up to me and saying, we've just been down to Kensington. They would ring me and go, well, we're in town because we just thought we'd come and put some flowers down at Kensington Palace.
Absolutely.
Staggering. Absolutely staggering.
And just to explain the effect it had on the world in other sort of areas, my good friend Stuart Higgins was the editor of The Sun in those days, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to remember this happened overnight, Saturday into Sunday. Most of the Sunday newspapers missed it because it wasn't. I didn't put the release out until about. I think it was 4:30.
Yeah.
I could check it because I've got a picture of it at home, actually, in a frame on the wall.
Yeah, I think it might have been slightly early.
3:40?
The only reason I say that is because my story is slightly different from yours. I was at home as well, but I was in Wiltshire.
Right.
And, I'd actually been out for dinner with a load of people.
Yeah.
And around about 2:30 in the morning, I got a phone call, but it wasn't from my office. It was from my sister, who was in New York. And, of course, they're 5 hours behind.
Exactly.
And she was watching the news there. And she woke me up and said, Princess Diana's broken her neck. She's been in a car crash.
I see.
And I said, what are you talking about? I thought she was talking absolute cobblers. And I wasn't sure if I was half awake, half asleep.
Yeah.
I went downstairs, and of course, the only thing that I could put on at that particular time was CFAX.
Yes.
And CFAX.
That's right.
CFAX was on the TV.
There was no all-night TV.
And there
was actually. Sky was running, but not many people had it.
Well, I didn't have it. I mean,
exactly.
I
not in Wiltshire.
No, not in Wiltshire. And so I'm looking at CFAX, and there was really nothing on there at all. So the first thing I did was I decided to ring my good mate, who was the news editor at the time, because I was the night editor and he was the news editor. He was also in Wiltshire. And I rang him up, and it was about 2:30. And I said, have
you heard?
I said, what do you know about Dinah? He said, yes, it's been a car crash. We think that, she's been very seriously injured.
Yeah.
And I went nuts. I'm like, what am I the only person that doesn't know about this? I said, I got a call from my sister in New York.
Yeah.
I'm calling you. He said, yeah, well, I'm going into the office, but I'm getting some sleep. And I think I'd been out for dinner with him.
Yeah.
He said, I'm going in about 4:30.
Right.
And by which time, of course, we then knew that she was
died,
dead. Yeah. And so I said, okay, well, I'll come with you. So I went in. We went in together.
Right.
Slightly later on. And then the next call I made was to the office.
Right.
Where they were producing the Sunday Express.
Yes.
And at that time, it was like a 7-day operation. And so they continued to produce papers through the night. And they actually did a 6 a.m. edition.
Yeah.
With the headline, your headline, Diana is dead.
That's right, yeah.
But up until that moment, they kept producing papers through the night.
Yeah.
With each kind of update. That they had.
It was absolutely remarkable. And so what happened was, Stuart was the editor of The Sun.
Yeah.
And he would have gone into the office at 6 a.m. on Sunday to put together Monday morning's paper.
Yeah.
Now, you probably won't believe this, but I've still got a copy of the paper.
I've still got a copy of every single one of them.
So have I.
I've got them in cellophane because I got them from the printers.
Yeah,
I said I want to keep these.
Yeah, I've got a set actually from that morning. Every single page.
I've got the whole week.
I've just got the day Monday mornings. I've got Monday mornings. Every single page of The Sun was a story related to Diana's death. Yeah. And I mean every page. I mean the front page and the back page and everything in between. Yeah. There was no politics, there was no sport, there was no fashion, there were no letters, there was no cooking pages, there were no pictures of glamour models, there was nothing except Diana.
Well, Scott's actually sent one in saying that morning we heard Diana sadly had died and I was getting ready for a Celtic Rangers game, which was understandably cancelled, because everything was cancelled, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
I mean, nothing happened really for an entire week.
No.
And we basically produced newspapers around the clock at the Express. Yes. Produced sort of, different sections inside.
Yes.
With all the photographs of her life. We did magazines. And I mean, we could have sold probably 3 times as many papers as we printed.
Every newspaper could have done,
because it was all that anybody wanted to do. And at the end of the week, when it was the funeral, I remember that a bunch of us all said, right, we've got to stay in London. And I remember walking down we stayed at the Tower Hotel, that one on the opposite side of the Tower Bridge.
One that should be knocked down because it's such a gargantuan
it's so ugly.
Architectural. Yeah.
And it's now run by some Japanese group, I think.
Is it?
They're right opposite the Tower of London. And I remember coming down in the morning to head into work, and it was a Sunday morning, and there was no traffic on the streets because anyone who was going to be up was going to be been lining the streets.
That's right.
For the funeral.
That's right. Do you remember as the cortege came out of Kensington Palace, a woman outside screamed.
Yeah.
She wailed.
Yeah.
You know, like that. You know, and you thought.
My parents went down to the top of Finchley Road,
right,
up near sort of North London, to pay their respects. I mean, everybody. It was the most extraordinary week
it was.
I've ever witnessed in newspapers at all. And I mean, one of the things that happened was I came out. And Piers Morgan was standing there, about to go to the Mirror, and I was going to the Express. Yeah. And there was only one.
Where was this?
This was at this Tower Hotel place.
Oh, I see. He'd staying there as well, was he?
Well, he was staying there because we all stayed in London because you didn't know whether the trains were going to be working, if you get back in.
Sure.
And so we all just stayed in town. And there was only one taxi, and I took it.
All right, good man.
Because I was going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, you stole it first.
And I gave him a little wave as I went away.
Yeah,
and he gave me 2 fingers.
Because he was going to Canary Wharf.
He was going to Canary Wharf,
on the opposite direction.
Which I know is a slightly sort of bitter and twisted inside journalism type story. But it was, without any question, the most amazing week of my life. It's in journalism.
It was, yeah. It was the most dramatic thing that ever happened. Yeah. It was just utterly and absolutely astonishing. And then when she got buried at Althorp, right, I'm still to this day, I mean, I hope this doesn't sound blasphemous, but at Althorp there is a family crypt.
Yes, right. Yeah. Well, the belief is that she's on the island in the middle of the lake.
Yeah, but see, I don't believe this. Do you know what? I tried to do a story and nobody would stand it up or believe me. This island in the middle of the lake.
Yeah.
Her brother, Lord Althorp, is it?
Yeah, well, it was Spencer, wasn't
it? That's
Lord
right.
Spencer.
Lord Spencer, yeah.
But who made the most horrendous attack on the press in that speech he made at Westminster Abbey.
He made the most horrendous attack on the royal family.
And the royal
family. I'll be bringing up now the royal boys.
Which of course he didn't do.
My niece, my 2 nephews.
Which, by the way, he didn't do.
No, he never did. Never did. But anyway, that's by the by.
Well, there were an awful lot of stories around about him at the time, which were less than complimentary.
Exactly, yeah, that's right, yeah. But
we better not get into those.
We're not getting into that. But anyway, so the last we saw of Diana was when her hearse went through the gates of Althorp, the family seat.
Because that was then a private matter, wasn't it?
Of course it was. The gates closed and that was it. And then we're told that she was buried on the island in the middle of the lake in Althorp, right? Yeah. But, you see, I just don't get this. Because there was a family crypt there, and they all said, well, they're not going to inter her in the family crypt because, you know, ghouls and people who'll come from America and try to climb the walls of Althorp and get in there.
I'm not actually sure if you can even get in there now to see where she is, can you?
Well, this is the point I'm making. Now, this island, you see, nobody's ever seen a gravestone. Nobody's ever seen even a cross or something like that. And when I spoke to people there, they said it would be impossible to have buried her on that island. And I said, why? And they said, if you put an island in the middle of a lake, you've only got to dig down 3 or 4 feet before you hit the water table.
Right.
I said, what do you mean? They said, the water level of an island is where the water touches the island.
Yeah.
And there was only 2 or 3 feet of land above it. It was an island in the middle of a lake.
Yeah.
And they said if you dug 6 feet or 8 feet down, you know, to put a hearse into, not a hearse, to put a coffin into that, it would flood.
Yeah.
It would now be flooded.
Could they not have sort of perhaps cremated her?
Well, they could have done,
without us knowing that. And because saying it was the family's wishes or her wishes or something like that, and then just had an urn there.
I think that's what they should have done. But
that may be what they did do.
Yeah, but they didn't say that. They said they were buried on this
very
lake.
secretive about it.
Very secretive.
And there are many people who would say there are lots of reasons why he's secretive about it. But again, you know, we can't get into that because
there was a lot of conversation about, you know, within a couple of years there was a huge sort of, you know, memorial. What do you want to call it? Hall, commemorating Diana with all her dresses and clothes and all that kind of stuff, which some people thought was a little bit too soon.
Yes.
After she had died. But you see, take John Lennon for instance. Well, he's always coming to the conversation, but nobody ever knows what happened to John Lennon because Yoko Ono said within 2 hours of his death, "No, I'm not. You know, we are definitely not having a burial or anything like that." Because forever people will come and desecrate the grave.
Or they'll go and visit, like they do with Jim Morrison in Paris.
Exactly.
And even the people are not sure if he's even there.
Well, Eva Perón is the biggest example in Argentina. When she died, and she was a hugely popular. She was like Diana of South America of Argentina. The hair shirts, who were the poor people, pulled her hearse through the streets, you know, with a funeral. Now, she was originally buried in a cemetery in Buenos Aires.
Right.
And you know what? Somebody dug it up and stole the coffin, stole the body, took it away. I think it took it to Madrid.
Yeah.
When they eventually recovered it, decades later, it was brought back to the original place where it's buried now, and 30 tons of concrete was then put on top of the coffin.
Yeah.
It'll never be recovered.
Yeah.
It can't. You see what I mean?
Right.
But that's the only way you can bury people without, who are, of the masses, without anything happening.
And Diana was very much one of those people.
Oh, yes, she was.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, we weren't really planning to talk about this tonight, but we have done, and so
No, we did.
I think remembering it is
Indeed.
quite remarkable.
Indeed.
But we've got lots more to talk about as well. Don't forget, we're going to be talking to Adrian Tinniswood, who's got something to say about the story of the Great Fire of
That's
London.
Right, absolutely.
That was 350 years ago this very week.
Yes.
Porky's always said that he thinks it was caused by Dutch spies.
Oh, definitely.
We'll put that to the author and see whether he concurs with that sort of particular mad
concur?
theory. But also we got Porky Vision, and we're going to have to work out what the quiz is going to be, which is going to be tomorrow rather than Friday, which is what I thought earlier. We are the two Mikes. We are Mike Parry and Mike Graham.
Yep.
Well, in fact, we are neither of those people, really. You are Mike Parry and I'm Mike Graham. It's really ridiculous when we try and be one of a part of half of two things.
Yes.
But what we're going to be talking about an awful lot is Princess Diana. 19 years since she died in Paris in a tunnel in a terrible car crash.
Yep.
350 years ago, the Great Fire of London started and went on for some time. And we've heard, I suppose, lots of experts talk about it in the past.
Yep.
You've got your own theories about how it started.
Certainly have.
And we know how it ended as well. Right now, we're going to talk to Adrian Tinniswood, who's the author of a book called By Permission of Heaven, the story of the Great Fire of London. And Adrian, a very good evening to you.
Good evening to you. Great to be talking to you, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I mean, I go to the Museum of London with my kids quite a bit, and I look at all of the various artefacts they've got there, from the buckets that were used by the firemen there, and the firemen's helmets. And I mean, the whole story is just a sort of a magnificent tale of historical significance, but also of kind of human endeavour, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the fire destroyed London 350 years ago. This coming Friday it started, and it just wiped out the capital city.
Yeah. It wiped out most of the churches, didn't it, Adrian? And I think St Paul's that we see today, the rebuilt St Paul's of Christopher Wren, wouldn't be there now if the fire hadn't actually happened, would it?
That's right. I mean, the old medieval St Paul's went. I mean, everybody thought that couldn't possibly go. It was this huge Gothic cathedral. Yeah. Standing up there at the top of Ludgate Hill, everyone thought, no, there's no chance that can burn, and it did.
It did. It went down, yeah. And most of the churches as well. Adrian, has it ever been decided how it actually happened? I mean, was it, Pudding Lane? Was it the baker? I mean, in those days, of course, there was so much dust flying around in bakers' shops that it's amazing it didn't happen sooner. But my own theory, having studied what I can of this, is that Dutch spies set fire to London because we were at war with the Dutch and they had a navy almost as big as ours.
And that's exactly what people thought at the time, Mike. That's exactly what people thought. Everyone was convinced it was a terrorist attack. We were at war with the Dutch, and 2 weeks before, we'd burned down a Dutch town called Westerschelling.
Right.
And everybody thought this is retaliation.
Right.
It couldn't possibly just be an accident. And, of course, it was an accident.
Oh, was it?
Tell you, the real reason for it is that on the 1st of September 1666, which was a Saturday, everybody's waiting for the battle to end all battles. There's a huge naval battle about to take place between the English and the Dutch in the Channel. And just as those fleets come together, a gale whipped up.
Right.
And that gale, it wrecked both fleets. There's no battle at all.
Right.
They blew out sails and it toppled masts. And then that gale moved up through Kent, and round about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday the 2nd of September 1666, that gale hit London, and by an awful chance, it hit London just as fire broke out in the baker shop on Pudding Lane. If it hadn't been for that gale, there'd be no Great Fire of London.
So, I mean, in other words, I mean, it was amazing, really, that this hadn't happened before, as Mike said, because there were so many likelihoods of fire breaking out. Most of the structures were wooden,
exactly,
and everybody lived very, very close together. So, it was
did
just
happen, Mike. It did happen all the time. I mean, houses were burning down every day in London.
Right.
You imagine a world lit only by fire, where you air your clothes by sticking them in front of an open fire. You look for your chamber pot under the bed with a lighted candle. Houses are always burning. It's just that the fire on the 2nd of September just happened when that gale hit.
Just astonishing. And as far as, I mean, there's a reenactment, I believe, being made ready for Friday, I think it is. And it's going to be put on a barge, and somebody is...
When you say reenactment, Mike...
Well, yeah, when I say a reenactment, don't be alarmed.
I'm worried now.
It's a model reenactment, let's say.
Oh, right,
but I was watching the local TV news the other day, and somebody has very painstakingly put together an incredible kind of scale model of what London looked like at that time.
Yeah.
And I believe they're actually going to light it and make everybody watch it. I think Sunday, I'm being told, it's going to happen. So that will be fascinating as well, to see whether that you can actually get a better idea of exactly which way the fire went and all the rest of it.
Brilliant, yeah. No, I mean, it hit Pudding Lane, which, as you know, is down by London Bridge.
Yeah.
And the reason people thought it was a terrorist attack there was because of this wind. This wind blew up embers from, threw them up into the air, embers from the fire in Pudding Lane, and they landed in the next street on Fish Street Hill, and they kept being whisked up into the air.
Sure.
And dropping down all over London. So everybody thought, well, this can't be an ordinary fire. There's fire bombers. They must be setting fire to houses all over the place. It can't be an accident.
Now, Adrian, what is the relationship between the Fire of London and the Great Plague? Did it, by some act of God, wipe out the Great Plague?
It didn't.
Right, well, let's hear it.
No, I mean, everybody thinks... I mean, I was taught this at school, and you probably were. Yeah. The thing is, the plague had just about finished. There were plagues all over England. I mean, the plague wasn't just in London in 1665. It broke out all over England. So to say that the fire put a stop to the plague when it was happening in Norwich and Derby and all over, it just doesn't make sense. But what happens is that when you get an outbreak of plague, these things go in cycles. And gradually people build up immunity so that to begin with there's a very high mortality rate, and then gradually the mortality rate lowers, goes down and down. And by the time the fire broke out in September 1666, the plague was just about over.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking, because sometimes when I walk down to our studios here at talkRADIO Towers, I walk down Union Street, which is the administrative headquarters of the London Fire Brigade, or London Fire and Rescue. Am I right in thinking that fire regulations started the week after the fire stopped, and some of them are still in place today?
They started very soon after, Mike. You're quite right. I mean, there's no fire brigades. All they got at the time, they got a couple of huge, what they called fire engines, which were massive cisterns of water on sleds with really crude pumps. And they dragged one of those down to Thames Street and Pudding Lane, down by London Bridge.
Yes.
And they dragged it down to the riverbank to fill it up with water, and it fell in and floated off, and no one ever saw it again.
Nobody ever saw it again.
Well, as I was saying, when I see the size of those little sort of fire buckets that they had water in to try and put the fire out, you can't believe that they were able to put any of it out. No. And I mean, you do wonder whether it just kind of burned itself out, got to the Tower of London because that was a stone structure to the east, and it stopped, and then got to sort of Smithfield to the west, right?
And that was it. Adrian, anyway, listen, we're running out of time, buddy. I wanted to ask you also about a new publication you've got out, The Long Weekend. You're a very successful author. What's that one about?
The Long Weekend. It's subtitled "The Life in the English Country House Between the Wars," and I won't say it's a great book, but I love writing it. It's all about the kind of Downton Abbey in real life, if you like.
Okay, Downton Abbey.
Well, that would fascinate you, because there was a time in one of an earlier shows that we used to do when we had the executive producer of Downton Abbey on.
Oh, absolutely.
Who was going to put Porky in as an extra down below stairs. Yeah. He thought he had the perfect look for something like that.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Domestic.
Although I love Downton Abbey, and I really did, as a huge fan, I was an even bigger fan of Brideshead Revisited because of the house, Castle Howard. Is it from that period as well?
It is, and I tell you what, I watched that Granada series again the other day, the whole lot, and it doesn't date. Golly, that's good.
Which one are you talking about? You talking about
Brideshead?
Brideshead, yeah.
Brideshead,
Oh, absolutely.
The one with Jeremy Irons.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I could watch that over and over again.
It's wonderful.
You'd never quite work out the relationship between Jeremy Irons and Sebastian Flight.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean you couldn't work it out?
Well, I couldn't quite work out. They're big chums.
It's ambivalent. It's a bit ambivalent.
Well, I think you're meant to be left wondering, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that the point?
Yeah.
But, I mean, you will know better than anyone, Adrian, the long weekend. I mean, there was an awful lot of times during those big, long summers between the two wars. Yeah. There wasn't an awful lot to do apart from mess with each other's heads, was there?
Well, and going to parties.
Yeah,
I mean,
but that's what I mean. Well, that's all part of the same thing, isn't it?
They were good, They were great parties.
Yeah, I always feel I was born for that sort of era, but sadly passed me by.
Yeah, as a below-stairs footman.
No.
As a footman.
No. I'd have joined up and become a Spitfire pilot first off. Very good.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
We feel as if we had a very long weekend back in last weekend up in Edinburgh, but that's another story altogether.
Last weekend.
Adrian, the lost weekend. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to talk to you both.
He's the author of By Permission of Heaven, the story of the Great Fire of London. Also, coming out very shortly, a new book called The Long Weekend, all about life during the wars in stately homes. Of course you'd want to be part of a stately home, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course I would.
That's typically snobbish of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got access to all the top gals, didn't you? You know, the daughters of the dukes and
the flappers.
Well, they were all flappers. The flappers were the girls who were in the
between
music
the wars
halls.
they were. No, between the wars they were flappers, weren't they?
No, they were the girls in the music halls.
No,
who
they
used to
weren't.
dance
The
on the
flappers
stage
were
and sing Hello Dolly and all that.
Yeah, no, but the people who dressed that way were called flappers.
Were they really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure about that.
You're going to look up on that.
Okay.
James says this. Please remind Porky ahead of tonight's Porky Vision that the second series of Poldark starts this Sunday.
That's right.
Don't give the plot away.
Okay.
Well, we had Kevin O'Sullivan on the other night saying that basically Poldark's all about him taking his shirt off for most of this series.
Yes.
Little sort of topless mining and topless horse riding and
That's right, yeah.
topless everything else.
Yeah, into all that.
Yeah, we'll get into that later on. We are the two Mikes. We are, of course, the two Mikes. He's Mike Parry, I'm Mike Graham. We've got quite a few tweets and texts coming in, of course, over the course of this particular show. And after the show tonight, we'll be back tomorrow at 7 o'clock.
We certainly
will.
will.
We've decided the Porky quiz will be about Edinburgh.
It will.
Because having been up there for the weekend, you will have gleaned quite a lot of information about the old city and the way that it's laid out, some of the sort of monuments that are there.
And mightily impressed.
And some of the sort of artsy things that go on there. So, I mean, I would predict if you know quite a bit about Edinburgh, as you do, you might even make about 4 out of 10.
That's right, indeed. Well, I think I'll make 7. I predict 7 on that.
All right,
one,
how about this from John? One of the best ever Porky quotes: "The Great Fire of London spread like wildfire." Well, that's what it was, a wildfire.
It was indeed. Yeah, that was a bit.
So
of
this
I
theory of
saying
yours,
that, actually.
I remember you saying it last time we talked about it. But your theory about the spies, the Dutch spies, has obviously been in existence for quite a long time. People have talked about it a long time. But Adrian there saying that actually doesn't think it's anything to do with them.
Well, he says that, but I mean, I also I didn't know, so I'm not challenging an historian like Adrian Tinners would, who just I'm not challenging his facts. But I didn't realise there was a battle about to be fought between the British Navy and the Dutch Navy, which I assume must have been taking place in the North Sea. Well, because that's where the Dutch come from.
Or in the English Channel, possibly.
Well, why would it take place in the English Channel? They'd have to come down, from the North Sea into the English Channel.
Yeah, we're not very far.
Wouldn't they attack towards the Thames estuary?
That's what I'm saying. I mean? So that would be, once you get down towards the Thames, that's then the English Channel, isn't it?
Yeah, but
it only really becomes the North Sea once you get north of sort of Harwich, doesn't it?
When you sort of turn left and get up to Ipswich. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
By the way, I was perusing the Evening Standard on the way to work this evening.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen this story about the cable car over the Thames? Well, Party in the Sky.
I just don't get it.
I want to take you on it.
What a load of rubbish.
No, I want to take you on it.
So this, they've got something like 34 gondolas.
Yeah.
And they can take... I read this. They thought they were going to be transporting 2,500 people an hour.
Yeah.
Over a 10-hour day. That's 25,000 people. Yeah. Do you know how many people travelled on it yesterday?
How many?
4,000.
I was going to say less than 3, I would have thought.
4,000.
Yeah. So, the thing about that is I've been on it a few times.
Yeah.
I've taken the kids on it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's quite an interesting thing to do. But it's not, the problem with it is that it doesn't really go anywhere.
No.
Once you get over to the other side from the O2.
It's like the whole bridge, isn't it?
Yeah, well, no, the whole bridge goes to Grimsby, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know.
Which is one of the biggest freight terminals in the world, as you've been told many times.
But anyway,
But the thing about the road from the O2, or the airway from the O2, is that it gets over to the other side, where the XL Arena is.
Yes.
And apart from a couple of sort of cafes and maybe a couple of shops, there's not much there.
Is it a bit like going to Staten Island?
Well, yeah, it's a bit like going to Staten Island, where basically you take the Staten Island ferry, you get off,
exactly.
have a couple of beers and come back.
Yeah, exactly. I went over there, a couple of times, and I thought, this is exciting. It's the bay, it's the harbour of New York, New York Harbour. You go past Lady Liberty and all that, and then when you get to Staten Island, it's one of the most junk infested neighbourhoods I've ever been to in my life.
The thing is, a lot of people live there, so if you live there, you're going to take the boat.
But don't you think they should have made it worth going to Staten Island? Because people love the boat ride, but when they get there, they're so disappointed. Yeah. There is, as you quite rightly say, just a couple of. You all right there?
Yeah,
okay?
I've got a little tickle. Well,
I've taken a lemsip.
I've taken a lemsip. I might have to have another one.
Yeah. When you get there, there's a couple of really run-down bars, isn't there? There's nothing there. Yeah. So you're saying that's what the end of the what's it called? The air shuttle.
It's the XL Arena. I think it's called the Emirates Air Ride or something like that because it's sponsored by Emirates. Yeah. And it's quite expensive as well. I mean, I think it's about £4 or £5.
But the development is...
Well, the development is that now passengers on the cable car will be able to drink alcohol and party into the night.
But I don't understand this. What are you supposed to do? Keep going to one way and then the other way and the other way?
Just go round. You don't have to get off, because it's one of those cable cars where it gets to the end and basically it's still moving very, very slowly and you step off it.
Oh, I see.
Right?
You don't stop, open the door and get out?
You don't have to.
Oh, I see.
I mean, if, for example, you don't want to get off at the other end, you can just go round and come back again.
How big are these gondoliers?
They've got, I would say, enough seats for about 6 people inside, and a couple of other people could stand.
Right.
I think about 7 or 8 people in there.
That's a lot of weight, that, on a gondolier suspended on a wire over the River Thames.
No, it's not.
But I mean,
why would you
so
put the fear of God into people?
So is the proposal now that, look, 4 of you can get on, a couple of bottles of champagne, bring your own glasses, and just party for a couple of hours, going to and fro?
Under the proposal, champagne can be served from 10 a.m. till 1:30 a.m. every day from bars on platforms at each end of the crossing.
Right.
So they're not suggesting you kind of get on with an esky.
No.
Basically, sit there opening bottles of wine.
Yeah.
Non-stop.
Yeah.
But you'd be able to pick up champagne at either end.
How long does it take to get across?
I'd say it's probably about a 10-minute crossing or something like that.
So I still really don't get it. You buy a bottle when you get on.
Yeah.
You have a few glasses. Now, if it's you and I and 2 friends, that would only last 10 minutes till the other side.
Probably.
So then do we jump off, get a bottle and get back on?
Well, you could do, or you could just have somebody hand you another one.
I suppose
and,
so.
Presumably you could do it that way.
Sounds
I can't imagine it's going to be something that lots of people would want to do.
No, sounds like a desperate attempt to revive something which has clearly not been thought out properly in the first place.
Because also the problem... Well, I mean, the problem is that, if it was a cable car that was something that commuters would use, then it would be very popular. But it's not a commuter-style form of transport.
Absolutely.
Because, one, it's too slow, and 2, it doesn't connect any 2 places where people live.
No, absolutely.
I mean, if you worked at the O2, for example, and you happen to live on the opposite side of the river, where the XL building is, then that'd be perfect.
Can't be more than a dozen people who are in that sort of position.
I would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the difficulty.
Yeah.
More importantly, the other story that I saw, which I thought you might be interested in, is this terrible story about a guy who was in court. A millionaire businessman launched a road rage attack on a retired insurance broker in the driveway of the victim's £1.3 million London home.
Yeah, we can talk about this because the guy concerned, the millionaire businessman, lives in a £3 million home nearby.
That's right.
Has actually pleaded guilty.
Yeah, he has.
And he's now being sent to Kingston Crown Court for sentence, which means that there's a possibility he will go to jail.
I would think he should.
But it's quite remarkable. The old chap, in the car, was turning left into his gated community.
Yes.
Therefore, you have to wait for the gates to open.
Right.
In doing that, the pedestrian, who is the man who's pleaded guilty, who's 51, I believe, and a successful businessman, who actually, strangely enough, I read that he owns the company called Danes.
Who put the Big Ben...
put the hands on the Big Ben clock. Which is odd, really.
So it's obviously a very old company.
Exactly, hundreds of years ago. But anyway, he owns that company, right, and he's been a trader in the city as well, I think, or something like that. He took exception to the fact that the guy stopped his car.
Well, apparently there was some contretemps between them, because I think he tried to walk across.
Yes,
as
that's what I mean.
The guy was stopped.
Yeah.
And then the other guy tried to go. And then there were, words exchanged.
Yeah.
And as the guy then went inside his house,
this
guy
followed
him and chased him.
Grabbed him as he got out of the car.
I believe the C word may have been used.
Yeah, that's right. And then chased him round the car. He says he threw 6 punches, but he says none of them connected.
Right.
So,
well, unfortunately, and as you've often pointed out, there's CCTV footage of it all.
Exactly.
But I mean, the thing is, this is the kind of story that we would use as an example all the time of how the sort of people you don't expect to get involved in punch-ups actually still do get involved in punch-ups.
Exactly.
And it's always over neighbours' disputes or it's over road rage. It's very, very strange.
I'm talking about terrible stories, by the way.
I mean, this is the kind of thing I always warn you about. When you start getting into fights with people on the train.
No, I don't.
Well, no, but you provoke people though.
I don't.
I mean, you provoked a rucksacker the other night, didn't you?
Well, the rucksackers are pompous individuals who
but
think
what
they
I'm
own
saying is,
twice as much
but
space
what I'm saying is you
as
should
I
be
am.
careful. You provoked a flip-flop wearer when you trod on his flip-flop.
Well, it was my fault. You should have
No, I know that. But all I'm saying is this is how it can end up.
Yeah,
and you'll end up in court. You'll end up in the Evening Standard, and it'll be bad news all round.
Don't worry, I'm smarter than the average bear.
Are you?
On a much more serious note, a helicopter was flying over my Porky Towers in Stockbroker Belt today.
Oh, yeah.
Because
of that police chase.
It was shocking.
Yeah.
I thought something's happened here because it was. I didn't know it was the police helicopter, but there were 2 helicopters. The second one was a news helicopter, which was filming pictures. And what had happened was a police car had set off after another car, which had identified through number plate recognition that the car was stolen.
Right.
So it pursues the car to a place called Penge, which is in southwest London.
Was there also the original story I'd heard was that the car was stolen from a Sainsbury's nearby, and there may or may not have been a child in the back of the car belonging to the person who owned the car.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know of that fact. But all I know is that what happened and ended in terrible tragedy is that the car being pursued hit a woman and a child, assumed to be mother and daughter, and they're both dead.
Yeah.
But harrowingly, the police who were chasing the stolen car had to leap out of their vehicle and lift the car they were chasing off the body of the child who was trapped underneath. And a shocking story.
Awful, yeah.
Absolutely shocking. And you knew when the helicopter started buzzing around, because, of course, helicopters fly in a big sweep of about 10 miles or something like that. Yeah. And it's right on the edge of Surrey and Greater London. Yeah. Terrible story.
But these are the things where no doubt there will be, I mean, there's always an investigation into what the police did and the decision-making, the process that they went through. But if there was a child in the car, because quite often people will say, well, you shouldn't really have high-speed police chases through built-up areas.
That's right.
But if there's a child in the car, then surely they have to do it. They haven't got any choice, have they?
Well, the individual circumstances of it have to be looked at by a police inquiry. But these things are terrible. I mean, and the police, I think, are always on the back foot on this one. Do you remember recently, very, very sadly, a footballer called Dalian Atkinson died as a result of police trying to restrain him by tasering him. I think it happened 3 times. Now, in those sort of situations, nobody knows what went on. And I deliberately didn't put out a tweet of sympathy to Dalian Atkinson, who I remember as a footballer. Yeah. I remember the famous quip. And Dalian Atkinson was a black footballer. Yeah. Ron Atkinson, his manager at Aston Villa, is a white man. Yeah. And I remember there was a TV clip in which some fan came up and said, "Oh, is he your son?" Yeah. And obviously, Ron, who had a good sense of humour, said, "No, he isn't," that kind of stuff, Right. So I remember him well, and he scored a classic goal, which has been shown. But the reason I didn't tweet out on it as a matter of, thinking of the family and that kind of stuff is because then you're immediately putting in the police in a situation where are they to blame? You see what I mean? So I just think it's best to stay neutral in those sort of situations.
Well, I mean, I think you shouldn't worry so much about the social media impact of these things sometimes. As I mean, obviously.
Well, social media is massive.
Well, it is,
and if it's misinterpreted,
it is. But I mean, you can certainly. But you can also offer your condolences to the family without putting any blame on the police.
Of course you can. But I just think doing that all the time, it sort of infers, he's been killed by the police or something like that. When of course the police do an incredibly difficult job. And you have to be very, very measured in the way you react to any sort of police activity. They have to make decisions. It's
rather like the decision, I mean, obviously not in any way comparable, but like the decision that you made that you talked about earlier on with Princess Diana. You have to make a decision. That's your job. Yeah. They have to make decisions. Sure. That's their job.
Sure.
They may get some of them wrong, but, you can't double think what they would be going through at the time they're making that decision.
No, absolutely.
And so it will all come out as far as we know about this car chase. But
indeed.
But in general, I would say it's very, very difficult to tell the police not to chase a car. Yeah. If there's a child in the back and the guy driving it is some kind of maniac.
And it's been stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Now, we've been quite serious tonight on a lot of things. We're going to lighten things up a little bit.
Definitely.
Coming up next, also in the next hour, it's Porky Vision. We will also be talking to Honey Lancaster James. What about that for a name? She's a psychologist. She's going to be telling us why it is that so many comedians have such a sort of difficult time outside of their stage role.
Indeed.
Because so many of them have got demons to fight. We are the two Mikes. I'm Mike Graham. He's Mike Parry. We've got loads coming up in the next hour. We'll be talking to a psychologist about comedians, and maybe we can get some clues about what the psychology of the two Mikes is as well.
Indeed.
Since we profess to be comedians of a sort, certainly when we do a live show. Yeah. We've got the Metro paper review as well. We'll find out what's coming up in Metro tomorrow morning. And, of course, we've got Porky Vision as well. I'm not sure if you want to give a little taster of what you'll be discussing on Porky Vision, or whether you'd rather leave it as a bit of a surprise. There's an awful lot of really good television on it.
Yeah, I think I'll leave it as a bit of a surprise.
Okay. Yeah. I had a real problem with my TV last night. I got home and I fancied watching a couple of things while I was having something to eat, to eat again, as it were, before I went to bed.
Yes.
And
can you sleep after you've eaten?
Well, yeah, not immediately. I thought I'd have a couple of glasses of wine.
Yeah.
I'll have a little frittata. I had some red wine. Very nice bottle of red wine, actually. Spanish.
And did you knock up a frittata?
I knocked up a frittata, but you know what I did? I made it very, very much more spicy than I meant to. I had this red chilli, which I didn't need. Sometimes you don't know how hot they are.
Yeah.
And it was so hot, I was literally jumping around the apartment, because it was really...
Why didn't you just stop eating it?
Well, because I thought it'd be good for my cold. because if you eat very, very spicy food, it can sometimes sweat
red
it all
wine,
out of you.
frittata. All this is happening in like midnight time.
This was
midnight
happening,
hour.
around about midnight, and I wanted to watch The Wire and the Blood, which is a good show that I used to watch. You know, it's very sort of graphic.
This is on Netflix.
Crime.
Is it?
No, this was on ITV.
Oh, I see.
And but the problem is sometimes, and I think it's partly to do with the atmosphere in the outside there, because it's Freeview I've got there,
right?
And it all started to kind of the signal started to get messed up, and it froze. And then it would do that thing where it sort of pixelates.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
and after a while, I had to switch it off.
Well, when I sometimes I go on iPlayer on my computer, even though I've got a brand new one, very expensive one.
What, computer?
Well,
you got a Dell.
Yeah, Dell. Yeah,
you've got a Dell, which is not an expensive computer. Somebody told you that was an expensive computer.
No, they told me it was the best.
What?
It's the best.
Who told you that?
Well, the very senior member of the technical staff here at talkRADIO.
I've had Dells, okay, and they are not. I mean, they're not bad, but they're certainly not the most expensive computer you can buy.
What's the most expensive then?
Well, you could probably have bought an HP, perhaps, which would have been more than that. Sony might be more than that.
I regard my advisors. My advisors got me the one I said.
Well,
was the best.
I mean, all my stuff's Apple, so which is much more expensive.
Yeah, okay.
But you probably couldn't get on with an Apple.
No, I probably couldn't. No.
I don't think you could.
No.
So, I mean, why don't you watch why don't you get a smart TV and watch iPlayer on that?
Yeah, well, I might do that. Yeah, I might do that.
I thought you were going to buy a new TV anyway.
I was.
Well, what happened to that idea?
I haven't had time.
You haven't had time?
No.
Well, just order it and get them to deliver it.
Well, the problem I've got is, because I've now got a two-door car, if I get it in the car,
well, you don't.
It's
you get
difficult to get it out.
You get them to deliver it.
No, you see, I'm not always there, so I don't like them to deliver it, because if they deliver, I'm not there, so I take it home in the car.
Well, arrange for them to deliver it when you are there.
Well, I don't know when I'm going to be there.
What do you don't know when you're going to be there?
Well, I don't know when I'm going to be there.
You're in charge of your own life.
Yeah, well, things happen. I mean, for instance, today, if I'd have said today, deliver it, please, at 11 o'clock today.
Yeah, right.
Well, only last night, you and I found out we had, a mission where we had to go out and do video things and all that kind of stuff.
Right, okay.
So you get caught out all the time. I might have got a call from another radio station who like me to go on and star with one of their...
Well, you could say, look, I'm terribly sorry, I can't do it today. I'm having a TV delivered.
No, I'd never turn that down. You can't. That's death, anathema.
Well, no, you can occasionally turn it down.
What do you think about Jeremy Vine and the situation he got...
we talked about that a little bit last night, didn't we? With his, did you read the story today?
I did, I read it,
I mean, it seems to me, and again, having not been in the situation that he was in, therefore not knowing how frightened he may have been, I think people are very, very quick now to call the cops. Very quick.
Yeah.
I mean, you get into an altercation by the roadside for whatever reason.
Yes.
My first instinct is not to call the police.
Funny enough, Sarah Vine, who was a columnist in the Daily Mail,
right, Mrs. Michael Gove.
I was going to say the wife of Mr. Gove, and he must have had huge aspirations, Ms. Vine, to have been First Lady, because of course Michael Gove stabbed Boris Johnson in the front, never mind the back,
and stubbed him as well.
Yeah, and stubbed him, and thought to himself, "I'll now get the popular vote to be leader of the Tory party, the next Prime Minister."
Yes.
So that's why she must feel somewhat deflated. But anyway, she wrote and she said, Jeremy Vine's an old friend of mine, and all this kind of stuff. You get on very well, and I'm in the business and so. However, she said, I too have been frustrated driving up a one-way street with a cyclist in front of me in the middle of the road, making me drive at sort of 15 miles an hour.
And I'm sure if you were the driver in that case, you would probably be honking at them and telling them to get out of the way.
I wouldn't use bad language and started swearing and all that kind of stuff.
Possibly not, no.
It's a bit uncivilized. The other thing I thought amazing is that Jeremy didn't only have a camera on his helmet looking forward,
right.
He had a camera looking backwards.
Really?
Yeah, that's why he knows that, she was getting aggressive with the horn and all that kind of stuff,
Well, I mean, you see, that, again, is I mean, he may have had good reason to put those two cameras on, but generally speaking, apart from the fact you know this guy, because you've worked with him quite a bit over the years, you would say that is the act of somebody who's looking for trouble. To have a camera going forwards and backwards.
No, I don't know.
We've previously been very critical of cyclists with these cameras.
Indeed. No, I mean, to be fair, he's a highly intelligent guy, right? And cyclists do feel vulnerable in terms of...
What, now because one of your mates has been involved in it, you're going to start being sympathetic?
No, what I'm saying is, let's not ignore the fact that in London alone, I think 12 cyclists have been killed over the last 18 months.
Of course.
So they do feel vulnerable.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
But having a camera on there, I think, is also kind of slightly exacerbating the situation, to me anyway.
Yeah, well...
Because if you see a cyclist with a camera, you see an awful lot of these videos that get posted on YouTube, on Facebook,
that's right.
Where people, chase women down in cars.
It's almost like they're going around collecting information. But anyway,
exactly.
That was yesterday.
I mean, my problem is that, people are just too quick to get the police involved.
Yes.
And when they ought to be able to sort these matters out between themselves.
Well,
because we were talking to Kevin O'Sullivan the other day, another situation where the police got involved in something they really didn't need to get involved in.
No, that's right. That's right.
all it does is lead to lots and lots of grief for everybody concerned.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
You know what I mean?
By the way, I tell you what I saw today.
What was that?
You know, in the future kitchens, you get a new kitchen fitted and all that kind of stuff. You know, like you've got your washing machine, right?
Yeah.
Well, on your washing machine, in future, there'll be a new button, and it'll just say powder. Powder. So you press that. Right?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't automatically deliver powder into your washing machine.
What does it do?
It sends a signal to the sort of people that you use who deliver stuff to your house. Is it Ocado or something?
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I just ordered some more of that last night.
Well, that's funny enough. Yeah. And you know what? That automatically triggers a box of washing up powder for your next delivery.
Yes.
See?
Yeah.
When you go into your bathroom and the loo rolls are running out, there'll be a button next to the loo roll holder. And you just push it. Yeah. And then loo rolls will be. You see what I mean? And you go to another part of your room, like your lounge.
Well, how many buttons are you going to have?
You'll have them all over the house.
Well, hang on. You can't have like 20 buttons inside your food cupboard.
No.
Goes, the spaghetti's run out.
No.
Or now the tins of tomatoes have run out.
You will.
Well, you can't put that many buttons in.
You'll have a panel below your food storage cupboard. Yeah. And it will have up to 30 buttons on it. Right. And you press that for sugar, that for tea, that for coffee. What?
They're only 30 in your case.
Why?
You just need like fish fingers.
No. Funny
Angel Delight.
Funny enough, the fish finger one will be on your freezer.
Yeah.
You know, and you press that for fish fingers, and that one for what else do you freeze? Like
ice.
No, cottage pie.
Cottage pie.
Yeah, and all that kind of stuff.
Why do you freeze cottage pie?
Well, I like cottage pie.
Yeah, but why do you freeze it then?
Well, sometimes I buy 6 at once.
You buy them. You don't make them. You should make them.
No, of course I don't make them.
Why
That'd
not?
be ridiculous. I haven't got time to waste making cottage
but
pie.
You see, if you weren't so busy all the time, you'd have more time to enjoy
Tesco's
your life.
cottage pie is very nice.
Is it?
No, I'm serious.
I'm sure there are other ones just as good.
Maybe there are, but I like the Tesco ones, and they're very good indeed.
Yeah.
And that will alert you to the fact that that's like in your bathroom, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Your bathroom, you know your mirror like cupboard.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's
I haven't got one of those actually. No.
What do you mean?
I haven't got one of those.
Where do you keep all your supplies?
I've got a sort of a what you might describe as a long sort of countertop.
Do you mean a shelf?
No. There's a sink, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a built-in sort of countertop, and then there's a toilet over there.
Yeah.
And so the counter is the length of the bathroom.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I don't need a cupboard.
Well, I've got 2 mirror cupboards.
I've got a couple of sort of shelves underneath.
I've got 2 very expensive mirror cupboards. You just press the mirror and it springs open. But anyway,
very expensive.
Yeah. And you will.
How much? Like how expensive?
250 quid.
What, for a cupboard?
Yes.
In the bathroom?
Yes.
So you spend 500 quid on a cupboard in the bathroom?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Ridiculous.
And they will have a little panel below for like toothpaste, toothbrush, mouthwash.
Well, why don't you, I mean, already you can do all that online. You can just go, this is what I want. And in fact, they've already got a thing whereby they will put together for you basically your basic shop.
Yes.
And they will immediately deliver you with that every week anyway.
Yeah, but you don't understand the psychology of this. It reminds you to order whilst you're actually running out of toothpaste.
Yeah, but you wouldn't remember.
So you never run out.
Yeah, but how would you remember? For example, say you got home, a slightly in a worse for wear condition.
Yes.
And you decided, as you were brushing your teeth, I better press the button.
Yes.
And then you press it again in the morning because you forgot you pressed it the night before.
So what?
Then you ordered twice as much.
So you get 2 tubes of toothpaste. So what?
Well, then you don't need that, do you?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I bet you also that the people who are responding to your instructions will notice that, hang on, you ordered that last night and it'll cancel out the following morning. I bet you.
It starts to get tricky.
No, I bet you.
No, it starts to get tricky.
I bet you. I know what I'm doing with these things, believe me.
No, you don't. I mean, I think you would benefit definitely from having people deliver stuff to you, but you will never want that because you say you're never there.
No, I'm never there. I'm not there.
So, I mean, I don't know how you get all
By the way, the other thing is, it's not just being there or not being there, but I don't want people to know whether I am there or not. What's your problem?
Why not?
Because I don't.
Are you like the Queen or something?
No.
Do you think there's some kind of, difficult... Well, plus, you've always told me you don't answer the doorbell when you ring.
I've had it disconnected.
Right.
I've had it disconnected. So,
So they'd have great difficulty in actually finding you?
No, if they persevere, because, I don't like to say this too publicly, but there is a tradesman's entrance bell.
Is there really?
And
does that get used much?
Well, it's how the paperboy gets in the morning.
Really?
There's only an opportunity of an hour in the morning when it works, you know what I mean? And the paperboy can get in.
Well, what about click and collect? Why don't you do that?
I don't even know what that is.
Well, that's where you order the stuff online.
Yes.
But in order to avoid them having to bring it to you, you just go to them, and what happens is you turn up the supermarket and they just give you all the stuff and you bring it home.
Sounds good.
That could work for you.
Sounds all right. Yeah, could do. But I mean, the problem is, and I know this for sure will happen, is something you order will not be available.
Yeah.
So they'll give you an alternative.
Substitutions.
Yeah. Well, I don't want substitutions.
No,
I want what I want.
I don't like that either.
I want what I want.
But you can send that back. You can say,
yeah,
look,
well,
I don't want a
okay, so
substitution.
what's the point of sending it back? Why not just do what normal people do? You go into a supermarket, you get a trolley on wheels, right?
Yeah.
Not a huge one where you put children in,
Right.
but, the
you
shallow
don't put
one.
children in one if you haven't got any.
The shallow one,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
And I go round and I get exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Then when I put it in my car, I know I've got exactly what I want.
Yeah.
I'm asking other people to lug huge... By the way, it must be the worst job in the world.
But this is a time-saving thing for you.
It must be the worst job in the world.
So you haven't got any time. We haven't got any time either.
You haven't got a lift in your apartment, have you?
Look at the time. No, I haven't.
So these poor guys have to walk upstairs with these plastic trays full of stuff.
That's why I get them to bring it.
I think it's a disgrace.
That's the point. That's the whole
Honestly,
point of it.
that
anyway,
really is.
Now, listen, we're out of time once again. The second hour of the show almost up. Good evening, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the Two Mikes. We're talking to a psychologist coming up in this hour because, of course, Gene Wilder died this week. And as ever, when a lot of the tributes came in, many people talked about how he suffered with his own demons and how he used to have to fight them off. And we're wondering whether, as part of a comic's kind of mental makeup, they have to have these demons in order to make them very, very funny and capable of doing all the things that they do. Also, we're going to be looking at the Metro this morning to see exactly what they're going to be having in the morning. And, of course, it's Porky Vision as well. The one TV review you don't really want to miss. It's all about stuff that Porky hasn't seen but thinks that you should be watching. You're listening to the Two Mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. Now, it's quite an exciting night for you, this normally, isn't it? Because if you are a football fan, you'll be watching very much avidly up until the 11 o'clock deadline where the transfer window closes, slams shut. And being a big Everton fan, people did say to me, will there be any mention of the transfer window tonight? I said, well, there might be one or two mentions of it. Because Everton look as if they've spent quite a lot of money on a player from Newcastle, a French international, for £30 million.
£30 for Soko. Apparently we were in a bidding war with Spurs. Yeah. And he's eventually
they only offered 15, I think.
Yeah, but he's a very good player, apparently. And we've signed another player of whom I'm not terribly familiar, I have to say, because we've been in the studio for the last 3 or 4 hours preparing for the show and putting it out. And I want to catch up on that avidly. Does it close at midnight, the window?
I believe it's 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock,
yeah.
11 o'clock.
That's what it normally is.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it looks like £1 billion has been spent, I think, for the first time today. So I know that other people on talkRADIO were talking about, whether footballers are worth that kind of money and all that. I don't think that's worth having that argument anymore. Really.
No, I don't either. But somebody did point out earlier, it was quite an intelligent review on it, that when you talk about £1 billion, if that was like raised for a charity, you see what I mean? Now, if, for instance, we're all contributing towards some disaster fund because, for instance, the Italian earthquake or something horrible like that, and people have been killed. Then you'd say, isn't it brilliant, £1 billion?
Yeah.
To celebrate £1 billion being spent on the exchange of footballers between clubs, I have to say, is rather, you sort of question the values of Western society a bit, don't you?
When you do.
You
do, but I mean, it's but it's a bit like, questioning if they had a similar system within, for example, the Hollywood movie business.
Yeah, exactly.
The money figures would be the same.
Yeah, exactly.
In the same way that, I mean, nobody talks about the NBA basketball fees or the NFL football fees or anything like that.
Totally
What
agree.
I can tell you, though, from Pete, is that he says Dell is the Morris Marina equivalent of the computer world.
That's a bit harsh.
#plank.
Those Morris Marinas, they used to fall to bits.
I remember a guy that had one of those.
Oh, terrible. Do you know they even produced a car, and I think it was called the Allegro.
Yes, the Austin Allegro, yeah.
And it had
remember it well.
It had a square steering wheel.
Did it?
Just to make it different.
Well, just to make it look like one of those ones they used to have in Thunderbirds.
Something like that. It was a dreadful car, because I remember when I worked at the Birmingham Evening Mail, I worked in a district office in Redditch, and all of a sudden they decided they'd have an umbrella-type district chief, you know what I mean? And this guy came from the Kent Messenger, and he was a midget. He was.
What do you mean? He's a smallish of stature.
He was a small guy with a big ego.
Yeah,
and he had blonde hair.
I hate people like that.
Yeah, I do. He had blonde hair, and he turned up in this orange car.
Yeah.
And it was an Austin Allegro, I remember, the square steering wheel.
Right.
And from that moment on, anybody who had an Allegro, in my mind, was a complete loser, a twerp.
See, you always associate individual people with certain things.
Yeah, of course you do.
And then you get put off them, don't you?
Yeah.
Pete also adds, he says, Porky doesn't want people to know when he's not at home. How about every time he's broadcasting?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, that's a bit of I can see that's a bit of a flaw in your argument.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
you're not there now, are you?
No, but there could be other people at home, couldn't there?
Why? Who would be at your house?
Well, you never know. I mean,
Well, you never know. Well, they can't get in, can they?
Have a wide reach into society, don't worry about
Sean
that.
says 3 gross of Tesco's cottage pies have just been dropped off at Porky's joint.
Excellent.
And Iron Lion says Porky is so critical of cyclists, but because he wants another invite and fee onto Jeremy Vine's show, he stays quiet.
Well, that's a terrible accusation. I speak my mind no matter what it is. Don't you worry about that.
And Davey says, please someone tell Porky he can have his TV delivered. It's 2016, not the 1970s.
Yes, I know. There's quite a few responses to the diner stuff. I mean, I know we've passed over it, but people have genuinely been quite fascinated in the detail we've given, your detail on what you did that night and how we talked about it. So thank you for the responses.
Not at all. Now, let's talk to Honey Lancaster James,
Indeed.
who is a psychologist. It was, we've had such a year. I mean, so many people, when Gene Wilder's death was announced, actually said, what a terrible year 2016 has already been for the numbers of famously brilliant people who have passed away. David Bowie, of course, being one of them. The whole litany of them, actors, comedians, music stars, etc. But you were particularly taken by what somebody said about Gene Wilder, in terms of his demons and what demons that he had.
Well, the thing is, I really like reading obituaries. There's nothing odd about that. I don't
think there is.
I'm fascinated by obituaries because the Daily Telegraph, who was always known as the Royal Navy's paper, they used to write the obituaries of admirals and commodores and people who died, who all had fantastic naval histories during the Second World War. My father was in the Royal Navy, so I got fascinated by them. Then you read other people's obituaries, and reading the lives of successful and prominent people is sensational. So I read the obituary this morning to Gene Wilder in the Times, and it was 2 pages, which is very unusual. It's usually no more than 1 page. And a lot of it was about the terrible depressions he had to fight throughout his life. And it occurred to me, whenever we hear that somebody who's been involved in the business of humour, comedy, acting, for instance, Robin Williams, they have terrible demons they have to fight during life, and sometimes their death is as a result of that sadness they can't overcome.
Sure. Well, let's talk to Honey and see what she makes of it all. Honey, very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Good evening. Oh, you're very welcome.
Now, is it something that we just sort of pick up when we feel like picking it up, in the sense that, perhaps what Mike's saying is that it's no more often the case that people have demons in the comedy world than in any other world, but we sort of notice it more?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to sort of approach that, really. I think on the one level, far more people do have difficulties, however you want to call that, demons or perhaps battles with depression or anxiety, difficulties in life, than we perhaps realise. And obviously it's those people that we tend to know from the world of entertainment or from public life who we will take more interest in their obituaries and we'll get much more detail about their lives than we will, say, the average Joe. So that can have one effect in sort of making it seem like everybody who works in the entertainment industry or in public figures have more than their fair share of demons. So I think that's one thing we have to be mindful of. However, having said that, there have been, there's very, very little research, hard research about, say, the particular sort of mental health or personalities of those in the entertainment world, because for a number of reasons, but one, and probably the most important reason, is it's very difficult to get access to people in that world and, on a private level. So we don't have an awful lot of sort of hard research to go by, but certainly anecdotally, it does seem that there appears to be a sort of a relationship between people who are attracted to roles in, comedy, comedians or comedy actors who do quite often say that they battle privately with depression and a whole other side to them that they keep very separate. And it may be that one of the ways they have learned to cope with difficulties in life is by developing a sort of heightened sense of humour or playing up their humour and learning to do that. So we know a lot about, for example, how people develop within families. They often take on particular roles in their family of origin, and someone who develops a kind of way of perhaps keeping things light, being very entertaining, may come from a background or a family that's affected by depression. So there may well be a relationship between those sorts of things that we do see.
Well, the thing is, honey, you're absolutely right there, because part of the obituary I read was that Gene Wilder, he was 83 when he died. In unenlightened times, when he was a schoolboy, he was said to be a bit effeminate, because of the colour of his hair and that. He was a small chap and all that. So he got bullied at school. And one way he could stop the bullying was to make his bullies laugh, you see what I mean? And that was his safeguard. That was his secret weapon. Nevertheless, He carried with him all his life, the fear of being bullied and all this kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, absolutely. I mean, in my career, I've certainly worked with a lot of, what you would call celebrities or people in the public eye. And it's certainly something I hear time and time again, that for many people, who are entertainers of some sort, they often learn the ability to do that through some period of adversity, whether that be in their sort of family of origin or whether that be at school, or they felt different in some way. And so they turned it to an advantage and tried to entertain others to try to kind of, ingratiate themselves rather than to become a target. So that absolutely isn't a surprise to me. I mean, I haven't read the official obituary in the Times that you were talking about yet, but certainly I've read some of the different bits online and things about Gene Wilder. And a lot of people were saying that he was quite open at times in his life about that kind of public-facing but the private struggles. And that, as we've seen with other people who have died, as you say, quite recently, Robin Williams, other people, it seems to be quite a common occurrence.
Is part of it to do with, as well, the nature of perhaps what they do, because if you are... I mean, we, myself and Mike have been up in the Edinburgh Festival recently for 3 days, and I mean, and not that I'm in any way trying to equate us with some of these massive stars, but you get to a point where, the day is a very different sort of day when you do that sort of work. If you're working at night, you've got hours to kill during the day. The risk is that you go drinking, or you get into drugs, or you hang around with the wrong people. And so it's quite a challenge, I imagine, if you're very, very famous. And you've got nothing to do for hours on end.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've been saying for years, actually, again, through my work really in this field, that actually fame is really quite an occupational hazard. We tend to think of it as being this wonderful thing that gets, great money and access to wonderful parties and red carpet events. But we don't tend to think about the real downside that comes with it. And, there is a huge amount of stress that is involved in sort of public life. And being an entertainer, first thing, as you say, is just the pure kind of, having to go on stage and entertain others, or whether that stage be just in general in public, or whether you are actually performing, no matter what you actually are feeling like, or what you've been through that day, having to turn it on, a smile and put on an act can be an extreme strain to people. And then often they live very, very isolated lives, with a very small circle of trusted friends and family. And the more fame that somebody experiences, quite often the more the social circle shrinks. And the smaller the number of people that they can actually trust and be intimate with. And what we do know, a very standard sort of social psychological principles are that if we've got good social support, we know that helps us in a lot of aspects of our life, but mostly in terms of our mental health. And so if that starts to go, or if for whatever reason that's put under strain because we're not sure who we can trust, or we feel exploited sometimes by people, or they're more interested in our fame than they are in who we are as people, then that can start to impact our relationships. So absolutely, I would say that, for many individuals who are in the public eye, there is a real downside to that, a real cost. And a cost to one's sort of mental health and relationships. That does have an impact.
We'll have to watch out
people.
for that, Porky, just in case we get too famous.
Absolutely,
and, can't handle it.
I mean, for years, honey, people have sort of mocked and derided Hollywood stars who first thing they seem to do when they get famous is find themselves a psychiatrist and a shrink and all this kind of stuff. But I suppose in the very strange worlds in which they live, they need that to reassert a balance in life, do they?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't think there's anything strange about seeking support from.
Well, no, but it was in the sort of 60s and the 70s, wasn't it? They got to shrink. Yeah.
I think what it is that perhaps Yes, I mean, there are certain things. So, for example, I work as a therapist and as a coach, and I think the first thing is, when you consult a professional who is perhaps bound by their professional body in terms of confidentiality, it gives you that added sense of security because you are protected. You can talk to that person in confidence. You know they're not going to go and sell a story on you. Many of us who work in this field have very, very strict confidentiality clauses. I mean, I don't even, I for one don't even disclose who my clients are, let alone, any details about their lives. And that is very reassuring for those individuals whose lives are under such public scrutiny. So I think that's possibly one of the reasons why it's even more valuable to them to have somebody that they can go to professionally. But that said, I do think it's also a growing phenomena in general that people are consulting therapists and supportive practitioners because although we live in a very connected world, in some ways we also live in a very disconnected world in others, and we tend to live far away from our communities and our families, and we suffer relationship breakdowns more often, and so as a result of that, I think we're in need more than ever of trusted confidence and people that we can be ourselves with 100%, rather than having to worry about our public image and how we come across.
No, I perfectly understand.
I think you're absolutely right. Honey, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Honey Lancaster-James there, psychologist to quite a number of clients. Yes, indeed. Great name.
Do you know the actress who's in Foyle's War?
No.
Honeysuckle... What's her second name?
I don't know. I've never watched it.
Honeysuckle... it's a
Honeysuckle
brilliant name.
Rose?
No, Honeysuckle Waters or something.
Is it? Well, you're the TV expert.
No, I knew it a second ago, and it's gone out my head.
It's gone out your head?
Yeah, she's an Oxford graduate.
Is she?
Great actress, and got a fantastic name, Honeysuckle.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
you know that.
Well, it's a shame you can't tell us what it is, since you're supposed to be...
Weeks. Honeysuckle Weeks.
Honeysuckle Weeks.
Yeah, that's her, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
You think it's a real name?
That's her real name.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sure she hasn't changed it?
No, that was her name.
All right.
She's born it.
Well, coming up next, it's Porky Vision, so you can give us your knowledge of television.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump's about to do a press conference with the Mexican president.
Oh, right.
Which should be quite interesting as well. Crocodile Shoes is a theme song to Crocodile Shoes, not Spender.
Yeah, but he played Spender in Crocodile Shoes, didn't he? Well, I think so.
I mean, you're the expert.
No,
you're
hang
the guy.
on. Spender was a different series, yeah.
That delightful music can only signal one thing. It is the return of Porky Vision, of course, because this is the hottest TV review, the one that you won't want to miss. If you've never heard it before,
absolutely.
It is one of the most amazing TV reviews you will ever witness.
It is, yeah.
And so, we're a bit short of time today, so let's get on with it.
This great programme,
Straight to it.
is the best I've seen since Peaky Blinders.
Is Honeysuckle Thingy in it?
No. Forget all that. No, this is called One of Us, right?
One of Us.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, honestly.
Okay.
Now, it started a bit slow. It's based in Edinburgh. How about that?
So what a coincidence.
Well, yeah, exactly, where we've been last weekend.
Did you recognise any of the locations?
Yeah, I did a bit, a few of the locations, And what happens is, I mean, it's an amazing programme, and you think, what is it all about for the first 20 minutes or so?
Right.
Well, this young professional couple in Edinburgh are making their way up the old, business ladder, and they're planning to get married. And then a junkie comes along, right? A guy, part of the filth. We saw a few people like that in Edinburgh. There are a few, although, generally speaking, a brilliant city.
Yes.
And he just breaks into their house and he kills them. I mean, he's...
Well, that's not much of a start to the show.
Well, actually, he's drug crazed. You know what I mean?
Hang on, but these are the two stars of the show.
No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're just young professionals.
Okay.
And he slits the throat of one of them because you later on you see the graphic.
Is it quite graphic?
Body on the morgue, on the slab in the morgue and all that kind of stuff. Now, naturally, needless to say, two young professionals growing up in Edinburgh, but both who come, believe it or not, from way up.
Yeah.
I mean, way up in Scotland. Okay.
Yeah. What you mean out in the Hebrides or somewhere?
No. Highlands and Islands, but on the Highlands, right? But the sort of place where, as you learn later in this first episode, when you call an ambulance, it takes 3/4 of an hour. You see what I mean? One of them sort of places, right?
Somewhere very rural.
Yeah, rural, and a lonely track to the
Down
house, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Now, what is absolutely amazing is that this guy, the killer, he somehow acquires something from their property, which gives him the parents' addresses.
Okay.
And the parents live actually quite close to each other, hundreds of miles away in Scotland.
So do you get the sense that this guy knew who he was killing?
Well, we don't know, you see. This is what's brilliant about it.
Yeah.
There's so many unanswered questions, which are going to get answered as the series goes on. Now, the second episode was last night, and because I've had so many requests in the past not to reveal what happened because people don't watch it for 48 hours, I'm just going to concentrate on the first episode.
Okay, all right.
So what happens is, this junkie guy, right, he then goes and does a street robbery. A bloke gets out of his car, a 4x4, he just pulls a knife and says, give me your car keys, give me your car keys. And because he's got crazed eyes, the guy just has car keys.
He's Scottish, this guy.
Yeah, and he says, and your wallet, give me your wallet, give me your wallet.
Right.
And so you got the wallet with the credit cards in, he got the car keys, and then he heads off, and he's got the address of the parents of one of the people he's killed.
Right.
We don't know why he's going there.
But he's taking the car now.
He's taken the car.
Yeah.
Now, this is 2 days after the killings. The parents have been notified, so we switched to the domestic scene in the house 300 miles away, up in the wilds of Scotland.
Where they're grieving.
Yeah. And both sets of parents have got together, they're grieving in the kitchen, and guess what happens? As they're grieving...
The junkie turns up.
Well, not only does he turn up, but because he's maddened with drugs and all that, as he's making the final approach to the farm where the families live, he misjudges the road, he comes off the road, and the first thing they know is this 4x4 is tumbling and rolling down from the road.
Really?
And it smashes to pieces on their patio outside their front door.
So is he dead as well, then?
Well, this is another twist. So anyway, this is where I know the ambulance takes 3/4 of an hour.
Right.
So anyway, they get the guy out. They don't know he's the killer who's killed their children. Right?
They think he's just some passerby.
They think he's some passerby, and they get him out. But then, in another amazing twist, the brother of the girl who's been killed is, trying to, sort of dab his wounds and all that kind of stuff, and finds, clutched in his hand, a piece of paper with the family's address.
Right.
I.e. where he is now, and thinks, how did he get here?
Yeah. And why is he here?
Yeah. Now, amazingly, what happens next is they go back in the house and the police have released a picture of the killer. And it's the bloke who's now lying on their patio.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So the brother then decides to exact instant justice and goes out and starts punching him in the face.
Right. So he's still alive at this point.
He's still alive, but I mean, he's unconscious.
Not in a good way.
No, he's not in a good way. So anyway, then the family come and say, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He says, "He's the killer. Look, see in the picture of her. My God, he is." So what they do is they lock him up in a dog kennel because being a rural farm and all that, they've got kennels for dogs and all that kind of stuff. And then they go and call the police.
Yeah.
And an ambulance. They'd already called an ambulance because they didn't know he was the killer. So then the son, who tried to beat him to death, goes and rings back the ambulance, but he's on his own. And what the viewer sees, but the rest of the family doesn't, is he says, "No, don't bother with the ambulance. Sorry, it was a false alarm. Our friend has just had a mild knock on the head. He hasn't got concussion."
Okay.
So he's told the ambulance not to come.
What about the police, though? Because they're coming now.
Well, he goes back to the family group and says, "Yeah, the ambulance is on the way, and I've called the police."
Yeah.
In fact, he hasn't called the police
he hasn't
at
called
all.
The police. Wow.
Now then, so the man is put in the kennel.
Yeah.
A storm is raging, which the son says must be the reason why the police haven't arrived.
Yeah.
And then the lines go down, the telephone lines. It's all very Agatha Christie at this point, right?
Okay.
But then what happens is, overnight, the man in the dog kennel is killed. He doesn't just die, he is killed.
Right.
He's bludgeoned to death. And there's 6 or 7 members of the family, the two families, in the farmhouse.
Who's done it?
Somebody's killed him. So then guess what? Then both fathers get together and say, if we now call the police, one of our family has killed that man.
Yeah.
So one of our family is going to go to jail for life for murdering him.
Yeah.
Let's not call the police.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they don't call the police. So they've got a stiff, like a body, in the dog kennel.
Yeah. Or a murder victim, as some people would call him.
Yes, but a murder victim who's also the murderer of their children.
Yes.
Who they are now not going to hand in to the police because somebody has killed this man on their premises, and that has to be a member of their family.
They're going to have to do something about the car, then, aren't they?
Well, that's unsolved. That's unsolved. The car is still upside down in the.
Sounds very intriguing.
In the garden, it's absolutely intriguing, right? Now, I have seen the second episode, but I don't really want to give too much away, so I'll move to another programme. Okay.
And is it with people in it that people would recognise?
Yes.
Any ideas?
Well-known actors.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Character actors.
Okay.
Those sort of people, you know. Yeah, famous.
But nobody sort of like stands out as a star or anything.
Well,
You don't. I mean, you don't have to give me a name if you're not prepared to do so. Because obviously, why are you making noises like that?
No, I'm
away from the microphone.
I'm just researching my notes here. Because I like to do these things thoroughly.
Right.
Okay.
We haven't got a hell of a lot of time.
In fact, you'll find. Let me see here. One of us.
Yeah.
Well, it's. It has unexpected consequences, all I can tell you.
Okay.
I can't tell you the name of the actors because that would be ruining it, okay?
Well, you've got a little time to give us something else.
Now, the world's nuttiest vicar is a guy called Billy in Coronation Street.
Uh-huh.
Okay? He's a gay vicar, so, he's a member of the community, he's got a boyfriend, that's fine, he's got a normal relationship and all that kind of stuff, okay? But he's fallen for another man.
All right.
But he's got bigger problems than that, Billy. And Billy must be the world's unluckiest vicar. His brother turns up, who is a cokehead, demanding money off him, for drugs and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he's giving his brother drugs, so he's helping him actually become a junkie.
Enabling him,
Yeah, a supplier. At the same time, one of his parishioners comes to him, a young girl, to confess that she's murdered a boyfriend and buried him under the house. Right, okay.
They're always doing that in Coronation Street.
Yeah, they're always doing that. It's not the first time they've done it. You're absolutely right. I thought that as well. I thought that's a repeat of
they've done that before.
From 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So Billy's now in a dilemma. Does he shop his parishioner to the police?
Yeah.
But the parishioner is also a very good friend of his as well, He's also got his eye on another boyfriend. He's been unfaithful to his boyfriend.
Right.
So Billy is the biggest sinner in the world.
Yeah.
Billy is enabling his brother to be a junkhead without stopping him. He's giving him money to buy drugs. He knows that they've got a self-confessed killer within his parish, but he's not shopping her to the police.
No.
He's going along with a plot by another guy who's trying to cover for the killer by telling the police that his dead father was the murderer, who can't answer for himself because he's dead.
Yeah.
And he's also, what's the Ten Commandments? Thou shalt not covet another man's wife and all that kind of stuff. We'll bring that into modern terms. Yeah. Billy is coveting another man's boyfriend.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean?
Or somebody other than his own.
Yeah, exactly. So Billy is the biggest sinner in the world.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know how long Billy can last because, I tell you what, the wrath of God's going to hit this boy.
You think?
He's just not doing it right.
You see that as a good Christian.
He's got to man up. He's either got to go to the cops and say she's the killer, or he's got to go to the cops and say my brother's a junkie, he's been taking drugs, or he's got to go to the cops and say, look, I am a sinner, go to the bishop and just simply chuck in his dog collar, in my view.
Well, okay. Or he could just carry on and pretend that he's a man of the people.
But he's doing everything wrong. He's the worst vicar in the world.
Okay. All right. Well, that was Porky Vision. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. Coming up next, we're going to have a look at what's going on in Metro tomorrow morning. Let's look ahead to tomorrow's top stories. Joining us now, Assistant Editor of Metro, Chris Cowley. Chris, a very good evening to you.
Hi, guys.
So, actually, as we are speaking, we're watching on television Donald Trump in Mexico on his first date with the Mexican president. It all seems a bit surreal, to be honest, as we're sort of seeing exactly what they're both saying about each other.
Well, it's happening as we speak, and unexpected visit by all accounts. Not even the press corps that were following Trump knew anything about it until a few hours ago. Here we got the president of Mexico, who once called Donald Trump, likened him to Hitler and Mussolini, and we got Trump saying that Mexico is a country full of drug dealers and rapists. So,
And he was not only going to build a wall, but they were going to pay for it.
Mexico will pay for it.
Mexico was somehow going to pay, and he said it wasn't just going to be any old wall that you could stick a ladder on and climb over. It was going to be a Trump wall, which, of course, is, by general consensus, better than any other wall.
Well, I've just been listening to it, and he's come out with this sort of... He's on the verge of wanting to shout and scream like he normally does, but he's been very quiet and much more thought, coming across in a calmer fashion. But he has actually still said that we should build the wall, or he should build the wall, and to protect each other's communities.
Yes, he was more or less saying that, the drug problem is a massive one for both of our countries, and we have to figure out how to solve it, which in some senses is quite a sensible thing to say, but because he's saying it, you kind of wonder, well, how's he going to do that exactly?
How are you going to build a wall across the border of Mexico? How will you get it across the Rio Grande to start off with? Now, just moving on here, pal. Theresa May's Chequers cabinet meeting on Brexit. What came out of that?
Well, nothing, it seems, because she's just basically, after 50 days in office as Prime Minister, she's asked for a brainstorming meeting, and she's just basically reiterated that Brexit means Brexit, which we heard a few weeks ago anyway, and then has asked for all her cabinet to come up with the plans for Brexit. But she wants to invoke Article 50 early in the new year. and we'll see what happens. But I'm hearing tonight there's sort of ill feeling going on between Boris Johnson and Liam Fox. And
well, what's new?
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, having a meeting like this, on the one hand, I mean, I'm surprised when you tell me 50 days she's been in. It doesn't seem like that because nothing really very much has happened. Partly, she's presumably trying to prove that actually something is going on, and that for those who did vote for Brexit, that they're not going to be led down a garden path and it's never going to happen. But also, all it's really done is highlighted the differences in the cabinet as far as what everybody thinks should happen.
Yeah, but as far as the electorate concerned, she seems to be doing all the right things because she's 14 points ahead in the, or the Tories are 14 points ahead in the polls against Jeremy Corbyn's Labour.
That's
well,
right.
In some ways, you just have to look at Jeremy Corbyn and find out why that is the case. Then,
and on this one, Chris, are you extending this to highlighting, the several reports over the last couple of days that the Brexit bounce has actually been a good thing, not a negative thing?
Well, yes. I mean, I think the house prices seem to have done quite well in August, and kind of bounced up. So, I mean, at the moment, I think we're still feeling our way as a country with the idea of Brexit.
Yeah.
But at the moment, there seems to be a lot of positive out there.
Yeah. Well, the house price thing, not to get too technical, is about supply and demand. There are enough houses out there, and that's what keeps that demand up. Now, just moving on, Chris, to another story which you can inform us about, please. First date, who should pay, the man or the woman? I've said for years that it doesn't matter if it's the first date, the second date, the third date, the first drink, second drink, or third drink. I will not let a woman pay for a drink.
You had a first date relatively recently, didn't you?
No, it had to be postponed, but it's coming up.
It was postponed.
Yes,
so you're going to be enforcing this rule, are you?
Oh, definitely not at all. So where did this come from, Chris?
Well, it's clearly it is a subject that divides the nation, and it seems that a new study has revealed that only 3% of women have paid the whole bill on a first date.
Yeah.
But I'm like you, of a certain age. I suppose we believe in paying for the first date. But younger people, it seems, under 24s, they go half and half. But
does it depend on what the first date is as well, to some extent?
Yes, I think you need to get it. You need to sort it out at the start, perhaps, what you're going to do. But, there are comments out there, because it follows on from this programme that's on the television, which if he doesn't pay on a first date, he's not going to get another one, said somebody. But then somebody else says no one should expect a free meal just because they are a woman.
Yeah.
So
I think that's fair enough in this day and age.
No,
you know what I mean?
I don't.
But
But
it depends, I think, on the age of the woman that you're going out with, to some extent. It depends, as I said, on where you're taking them. I mean, if you're going to take a woman who is not particularly well endowed financially to the Gavroche, you're not going to expect her to go.
Well, I was going to say, doesn't this depend largely on the relative wealth of the individual partners? I mean, for instance, if I, tomorrow decided to invite a merchant banker lady out for dinner, and she said, "Yeah, okay, that's great. Let's go."
Wetherspoons.
No, exactly. We'll go to the Ritz or something like that. And she expected me to pay the bill. I'd find that a bit cheeky, really, but I'd still pay it.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you've asked her out, you should pay for it. But if you're going out, or if you're meeting sort of, say, via a dating app or something, where you have a mutual sort of, we'll meet at a certain place at a certain time, and then you get there and you have to work it out amongst yourselves. So I think get it out, so to speak, at the start of the dinner.
Whereas if you're taking a woman, say, for the first time,
get it out at the start of the dinner.
That's not the sort of language we appreciate here at talkRADIO. But what about if you're taking the woman to a box at Wimbledon, Centre Court, for the first time, and you've already paid for the tickets?
Yes.
Presumably you wouldn't expect the woman to go, "Can I give you half for the the $2,000 you just spent for these seats?"
Well, of course not. You wouldn't, would you, Chris?
What about you, Chris?
No.
I certainly wouldn't. No. If I've got the tickets, and then
you'd get them for free probably anyway, wouldn't you?
Well, maybe
just pretend
not.
You'd bought them.
But maybe I'll do that. Yeah,
okay. Good idea.
Fantastic stuff. Well, that's all coming up, of course, in Metro. That was the pay-per-view with Metro. Get your fix of news, sport and showbiz every weekday morning. Pick up your free copy of Metro tomorrow. We are the two mics. Now, I've got a great idea here that I've spotted in one of the journals that I've been perusing, funnily enough.
Oh, yes.
And do you know how when you talk about going to the cinema, you don't like the idea of sort of buying a cheap seat, and you buy what you could describe as the VIP seat?
Yeah, I do.
Right?
Yeah, I buy like what you might call a club seat.
Yeah, a club seat. So you're in sort of club class in the cinema, which to me is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Yeah. Apparently, a lot of cinemas are now just ripping out the cheap seats, right? Yeah. And saying that we don't actually need those anymore.
Right. Yeah,
We're not going to charge £7 a time. We're going to now put in basically sofas. We're going to put in more luxurious seating.
Really?
For which you will
Quite
pay
like
somewhere upwards of about 10 quid.
Yeah.
To sit there
Easy.
or lie there and watch a film.
Easy.
My worry would be in a darkened room like
Yes.
a cinema, because I have trouble in cinemas. If the film is not completely and utterly compelling, I fall asleep.
Do you?
And if I was on a sofa, I'm almost certain I'd fall asleep.
No, I wouldn't fall asleep, but I...
But you've famously never seen the end of any movie, have you?
Well, yes, I have. I mean, you make that accusation against me. But, I mean, I tell you what I quite like these days is that you can go to cinemas now and you get a club seat and it's actually got on your armrest a location for your glass of wine.
Yeah.
You can drink all the way through a film
Are you sure
these
it's
days.
not a holder for a massive cup of Coke or something?
No, definitely not. It's a placemat for a glass of wine.
Some will offer fine dining with waiter service.
Yeah.
Others will offer licensed bars.
Well, you see, this is getting better. Now, it seems...
I don't think it is.
Seems to me that... have you ever been to one of these boxing nights at a gentleman's club?
Once I went to one in a hotel, which was done up as a boxing night,
Exactly, and you sit at the table, you have dinner and all that, and then you watch the guys. Now, I found
wasn't for me, to be honest.
I found it quite horrifying that, for the titillation, delectation of people who were in, dinner suits, eating and drinking, two blokes were bashing the hell out of each other in a ring just to keep you amused.
Yeah, and half the time the people who are in there actually eating and drinking, they're not even paying attention.
Not paying any attention at all.
Some poor guy getting his head lassoed around.
Yeah, absolutely right. But having said that, I think to improve the quality of facilities in cinemas is great, because if it's a compelling film, like, for instance, most Bond films are compelling.
Well,
except the last one
but also they're all quite long now.
Yeah, they are.
They really are.
Yeah.
And if you were, shall we say, having experienced fine dining and a few glasses of wine, you might struggle to stay awake.
Is Jason Bourne out on release now?
It is, yeah.
Right, I'm going to see that.
Are you?
This weekend.
Okay.
And I want to see the Beatles film. Now the Beatles film...
That's out soon as well, isn't it?
That's called 8 Days a Week, the Ron Howard one. Now, if I can find a cinema that's got a really comfortable area, I'm going to have some dinner, a glass of wine, watch that film. That would be, to me... That would be Valhalla.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, according to a piece that I've seen, AMC, which is the Chinese-owned firm that bought Odeon Cinemas earlier this year for 921 million, right, are getting into
nearly
this.
$1 billion.
Now, this sounds like the sort of thing you would come out with. Guest experience strategies.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll have a guest experience strategy. What does that involve?
I just want to take my kids to the movies, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be charged 10 quid.
Yeah.
I want to be charged, about 5 quid, actually, but instead they charge about 7. I mean, when I take my 2 kids to the movies, I never get away for less than 30 quid.
Well, no, because you
by the time you've bought them some pick and mix.
Exactly, you buy them a box of... Do you know, I always order far too much pick and mix. I always end up leaving half it. I've got... My eyes are bigger than my belly when I'm standing in front of the pick and mix.
Pick and mix is easy to do
that, yeah. And I have, a few licorice all sorts.
Yeah.
You know those long red things, which are like
very
greasy.
Chewy,
chewy,
very chewy.
I like
Do you like the fried eggs?
No, I like the bananas. You know the spongy bananas.
Coke bottles.
Coke bottles. I'll have a few of those.
What about you don't like chocolate? See, I do. I only ever get the big Brazil nuts.
Yeah,
and also the peanuts and raisins. I love. I can eat chocolate peanuts and raisins literally.
I totally agree.
Until I become one.
We're talking the same language here.
Yeah.
Wine gums. Got to have a few wine gums.
You can't mix chocolate with that.
Well, you can, because I put them in separate containers, you see. So I go from one to the other. Because you can have too much chocolate and then feel like your mouth's gunging.
But also, chocolate's a bit of a stimulant. It keeps me awake.
Yeah, well, it could be.
I mean, when I used to drive home to Wiltshire after a long night at the old coalface working in London, I used to have a load of chocolate peanuts and raisins because it kept me awake.
Yeah, well, that's probably why you shaped like you are now. No, you did that for a few years.
Actually, the reason I'm shaped like I am now is because of the amount of time I've been spending with you.
No, it's not. It's nothing to do with me.
Absolutely is.
Anyway, with me. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, well, hang on. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I thought you were out on the town tonight in the West End.
Well, I'm not in the West End. No, I'm going to another part of London, actually.
And where is that?
Why would I tell you exactly where it is?
I think it's the West End.
No, it's not the West End.
Oh, really?
It's not the West End.
Well, you told me the location earlier, which I'm not going to say publicly because you don't want me to, but that is the West End.
Well, what would you consider to be the West End of London? Kensington is not the West End.
Kensington is very much the West End.
Kensington is not the West End.
At West.
No. The West End begins, I would suggest to you, at Hyde Park Corner.
Right.
Now, I'm from London, okay, so don't forget that.
Yes.
You're from the north. You have no idea where London is.
What would you describe Kensington as, then?
Kensington is Kensington. If you went to Kensington Palace, right?
It's not the East End, is it?
It's not the East End either.
Do you know why, by the way? You might know the answer.
Do you know where the East End starts?
The East End starts at... Let me think this one through. It starts on the other side of Tower Bridge.
Not quite. It starts at Aldgate.
Aldgate, yeah, okay, yeah. Now, you know why the East End of cities has always been the poor end?
Well, my father had a theory about this.
And the West End is the rich end. Go on.
My father's theory was that the wind prevailing was always blowing from the west, and so the rubbish was blowing to the East End of the city.
That's absolutely true. In towns like Birmingham and Nottingham,
Glasgow.
Manchester and Glasgow, industrial towns, the factories...
when you live in Glasgow, and we'll be going there in December, right? If you live in the West End of Glasgow, it's still considered to be rather pajink.
Yes, that's
right. Rather posh.
That's right.
Whereas you live in the East End, it's where Celtic's football ground
because the winds were always...
prevailing from the west.
Westerly winds.
Yeah.
A westerly wind doesn't mean it's blowing to the west, it means it's blowing from the west.
That's right.
Okay?
Correct.
And they blew from the west, and that meant that all the filthy factory smoke and all that kind of stuff, right,
litter.
was blown away.
Detritus.
Yeah, I mean, most of the factories were in the East End anyway, because that's where the working people were. But the rich people in the West didn't want the blinking smoke blowing over to them. So that's a position like that.
Exactly right.
But anyway, sorry. So
it's not the West. To me, the West End begins at Hyde Park Corner, right?
Okay, that's fine.
And that leads on to Piccadilly.
Now, what time are we expected at this do tonight?
Well, I'm expected after I finish this show.
I said what time are we expected at the do tonight?
We? What do you mean you? Well, you're not coming. I'm going on my own. You haven't been invited. I was invited to go to a party.
Hang on.
And,
we don't go to things on our own.
No, we are not joined at the hip.
We don't go to things on our own.
Well, you always go to things on your own.
You know, we have built a reputation as the two mics.
That's right.
So where are you going on your own?
I'm going on my own because I can't take you there because you were not part of the process of invitation.
What?
You were not invited. The invitation did not say, please bring Mike Parry with you. In fact, it more likely would have said, please do not bring Mike Parry with you.
Well, you shouldn't have accepted it in that
Why
case.
Not?
Because of loyalty and the
How many
bond.
times have you been to football, private boxes in football matches without taking me?
That's different. I support a team, Everton.
How's it
don't.
Different?
So
plenty of times you've gone to things on your own.
What are you going to do tonight when everybody else says, where's the other Mike? Or how's Porky? What are you going to say?
I'll say he's fine. He had to go to bed early.
This is despicable.
You won't be able to get home from there.
Despicable.
You don't live in London, right?
I don't care.
There are reasons
I get a car to take me home.
There are reasons why you can't be taken to a place like this.
This is outrageous.
It's far too sophisticated for you. They wouldn't let you in dressed like that for a start.
Well, you didn't tell me you were going out till I got here tonight. Otherwise, I'd put a suit on like you.
Obviously, I had to keep it quiet because I didn't want you getting worked up. But now you're getting worked up.
Well, you
haven't even got a jacket on.
Well, I haven't got a jacket on because I didn't realise that there was a formal do to go to afterwards.
Well, I'm terribly sorry. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow. To be honest, it probably won't be that great.
Very kind of you.
But, some very important people there who I don't want you to insult, basically.
I wouldn't insult them.
You probably would.
I think you know what? You're afraid of me outshining you at a do like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Obvious.
Yeah,
you are.
That's exactly right.
That's right. You don't want to be walking around that room in my shadow, do you?
Well, there's no way I would ever be in your shadow.
Yeah.
Absolutely no chance of that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're so upset about it.
Well, I'm sorry, but I mean, this is
I'm sure there will be any
bit of a watershed, this, mate.
I'm sure there will be any number of things coming up in the next few months where you go on your own. Like you do whenever it suits you.
What do you expect to be consuming at this place tonight, then? Drink, food, all this kind of stuff?
I don't think food, because it started around about 6:30 tonight.
Oh, well, there you go, then, you see. So you're just going on the dregs of the...
I'm going, well, because I wasn't able to go there at 6:30 because I was on the air here at 7 o'clock. So I couldn't really go to, I haven't got a time machine.
So you're not really going to a do at all. You just... By the time you get there, they'll all be bladderated.
Well,
some of them will have left.
Some of them will be. Some of them will have left.
Yeah.
But the ones that I want to see will still be there.
Do you know what you are? You're the sort of person that when somebody gets married, they just invite you to the evening do.
Yeah,
right?
I don't mind that.
Yeah?
I don't mind that.
Just the evening
You see,
do.
the difference between you and I is that whenever that's happened to you, you've done nothing but moan and groan about it. Whereas when I've been invited to an evening do just for the drinks, and in fact, one of the people who's invited me to this, he invited me to the evening do of his wedding as well, a long time ago. And actually, I was more than happy with that, because I don't like to go to weddings for the entire day.
No.
I don't want to turn up at the church at sort of 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
I feel people like me to be at their weddings just to raise the profile.
Well, apparently they don't, do they?
Stuff. No, I think
they don't. I mean, unless you're not talking about your sister's wedding where it was just done for tax purposes. We're talking about people who actually have a proper wedding and a proper celebration.
I think
and they don't invite you because they think if they have you there too long, there might be an issue with the amount of grog taken in.
No, I don't think so.
And you'll then sort of burst into song or something.
All right. Well, I really hope you enjoy your do tonight.
I'm only going. I mean, I'm not feeling particularly well. I'm going to properly pop in for about an hour. And I'll jump in a cab and I'll come home.
So you're just hobnobbing on some free drink, basically?
No, I'm seeing some people I haven't seen for a long time.
Hobnobbing on free drink?
No, you see, the
are you
problem
going to put your hand in your pocket tonight? Probably not.
I don't expect to, no. But I will if necessary.
So it's free drink?
Well, I don't know whether it is. It's not the reason I'm going.
I'm glad I'm not coming with you.
I'm glad you're not coming with me as well.
I might be embarrassed.
Because I can see you're already in the kind of mood to be giving people a hard time.
No.
So you're giving me a hard time. As soon as you got there, you would start giving them a hard time.
I could easily be embarrassed.
And then I would be, by association, tainted by your lack of good manners.
Anyway, it doesn't bother me whatsoever.
I can see that.
Last show of the week tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes.
It's the Porky quiz.
Porky quiz on Edinburgh.
On Edinburgh, yeah.
So I'll have to inform, before I leave here tonight, I'll have to inform the independent quizmasters to put a quiz together on Edinburgh.
You better had, yeah. How do you expect to get home tonight, then?
I would imagine in a cab.
A cab?
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Why is that so outrageous to you?
Well, no, it just means that you're going to be staying beyond the time that public transport closes down.
Well, I think the last train's about midnight, isn't it?
Are you going to be fit to work tomorrow? And
I should think so.
You're not going to be, sloping around in your bladderation?
No, I shouldn't think so.
Toxic,
I might take some whiskey on board. Might do my cold
state.
good. Well, I have to be on air till 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah, well, it doesn't bother you sometimes.
Well, I mean, I could come.
You might not get to bed until 4:30.
I could get home at 7 in the morning, and I'd still have 12 hours to get ready for a show. What would be wrong with that?
I think it's an outrage.
How long does it take you to recover?
I think it's an outrage.
The difference between you and I is that I actually don't